Good evening. I call to order this meeting of the Gladstone City Council for Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. It's 6:30 p.m. The City of Gladstone is abiding by guidelines set forth in House Bill 2560, which requires the governing body of the public body, to the extent reasonably possible, to make all meetings accessible remotely through technological means and provide opportunity for members of the general public to remotely submit oral and written testimony during meetings to the extent in-person oral and written testimony is allowed. Therefore, this meeting will be open to the public both in person and virtually using the Zoom platform. The Zoom instructions are on the agenda to the meeting. If members of the public would like to comment on an agenda item, either virtually or in person, they were to have emailed their comments or their request to speak to the city recorder prior to noon today. Individuals attending in person may submit a speaker card to the city recorder prior to the beginning of the meeting. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. The speaker cards are on the table at the entrance. The City Council will also have Gladstone City event announcements during the meeting and business from the audience at the end of the meeting. To speak during either time, virtually or in person, again, you should have emailed the city recorder prior to noon today with your name, topic of discussion, and city of residence. Individuals attending in person may also submit a speaker card to the city recorder prior to the beginning of the meeting. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Councillor Huckabee.
Present.
Councillor Mitchell.
Present.
Councillor Blau.
Present.
Councillor Labonte. Councillor Farley.
Here.
Councillor Garlington.
Present.
Mayor Milch.
Present. Please stand for the flag salute. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I see we have a large police presence tonight. I'm going to ask Chief Schmerber to come forward for a little presentation.
Thank you. Greetings, Mayor, City Council. Tonight, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce you to two of our newest police officers. First, I'd like to call up Officer Aaron Anderson, Georgia. Chief. Aaron has served in law enforcement since August of 1990. He began his career in Portland with the Portland Police Bureau, where he dedicated 35 years of service to that community. In August of 25, Aaron continued his public safety career, serving the Gladstone community as a police officer. Aaron holds a bachelor's degree in communication and master's in business administration from Concordia University. He also holds an advanced certificate from Oregon Department of Public Safety Standards and Training. In addition to his law enforcement service, Aaron is a proud member of the Portland Highland Guard, which is bagpipes. Their mission is to honor and commemorate fallen police officers and firefighters throughout the Portland metro area, and specifically the Northwest. The groups perform at memorials, funerals, and academy graduations. Aaron displayed his talents on the bagpipes during Devin's graduation ceremony at the academy. Aaron is married to his wife, Lisa, and they have 2 sons. And if you can introduce your family members that are here.
Oh, I'd love to. There's Lisa sitting right here in the front corner. Next to her is our oldest son, Seamus. Next to him, his girlfriend, Georgia. Down at the far end is Broden, the youngest son, and his girlfriend, Lily. Right.
Nice to meet you guys. And your city council.
Thank you.
And now we get to embarrass one of our local guys. Come on up here, Devin Hall. Devin was hired as a Gladstone police officer on September 25th, 2025. He completed the police academy on February 27, 2026, and continues his training with the field training officer serving this community. Devin is a local kid, graduated from Gladstone High School in 2018, and later earned his associate's degree from Clackamas Community College. In his spare time, Devin enjoys playing volleyball, softball, and working out. He's married to his wife and they continue to live in Clackamas County. Devin tells me he loves working in Gladstone because this is where he grew up. So congratulations. Please introduce your family.
So up front here, this is my mother, Penny, my wife, Ayana, father-in-law, Mike, mother-in-law, Katie.
And this is your city council. Oh, feel free to give a speech, yeah.
Thank you very much. Very nice to meet you, Aaron and Devin, and we hope we'll see you around under real good circumstances, always. And thank you to your families for coming. We have a lot of business on our agenda tonight. I don't expect everyone to stay through the entire meeting, so just so you know. Administrator Betts, I understand we have an addition or correction to the agenda tonight.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yesterday, the city issued an amended agenda, so we have a new item number 12, which is application of home occupation permitting for residential care homes.
Okay, so we'll get to that later in the meeting. We begin as usual with our consent agenda. And we have the usual items: approval of the February 10th, 2026 regular minutes, approval of the January 2026 bank balances, the budget report for the period ending January 31st, 2026, approval of January 2026 check register, legal costs for January 2026, and department head monthly reports for February 2026. Would anyone on the council like to pull any of the items from the consent agenda? If not, would anyone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Seconded.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Huckabee and seconded by Councilor Blaug. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Counselor Farley,
Yes.
Counselor Blaug,
Yes.
Counselor Mitchell,
Yes.
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the consent agenda is approved. I will highlight one item from the department head monthly reports. From the Public Works Department, I noticed that in the last month, 4,400 dog waste bags were used in Gladstone parks. I think that speaks to the responsibility of our citizens, and I want to thank all the dog owners for picking up after their pets. That was just an odd statistic that caught my attention. Correspondence, I have one letter that I received from two students at John Wetton Elementary School that I'll be sharing later when we get to item 8 on our agenda. And now, are there any Gladstone City event announcements?
We have two. The first is Nicole Quackenbush.
Hi, Nicole. You know to push the button to be heard.
Thank you. All right. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Nicole Quackenbush, and while I serve on the Gladstone School Board, tonight I am speaking as a community member and volunteer helping organize a local political action committee, or PAC, effort that supports the future of Gladstone schools. I wanted to briefly share an upcoming event. On Wednesday, March 18th at 6 p.m., the Save Gladstone Schools PAC will be hosting a kickoff meeting at the Arlington Tap House upstairs loft. It's a casual gathering for people in the community who care about the future of Gladstone schools and want to learn more about how they can get involved in supporting a future school bond effort. I want to be very clear that this is a community-led PAC event and not a school district-sponsored event. It's being organized by volunteers, parents, educators, and community members who believe strongly in the future of our schools. I would also like to add that this meeting is not happening behind closed doors, and that's very intentional. We believe that these conversations should be open, transparent, and welcoming to the community, where people can learn more, ask questions, and decide whether they want to participate. There's nothing secretive about neighbors getting together to support our schools. Of course, we understand that not everyone in the community supports a future bond, and that's okay. That's part of living in a community where people care enough to have these discussions. But for those who do want to help organize, volunteer, or simply learn more, this meeting is a chance to connect and start building that effort together. We're also grateful to Matt and the team at Arlington Tap House for hosting us and for being one of the first local businesses to publicly say that they support Gladstone schools. So again, the meeting will be on Wednesday, March 18th at 6 p.m. at the Arlington Tap House. Kids are welcome, and we encourage people to support the food carts and Tap House while they're learning how they can support our schools. Any questions? No? Hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
The next is Robert Everett.
Hello, Dr. Bob.
Hello there. Good evening, counselors, Mayor Milch, and Jackie, and also Heather. Hello, Heather. Thank you for having me once again here. I missed last month, and I'm always sad when I can't sit in front of you guys and say hello. And anyway, but we did have a great bingo last month. There were a lot of people. It was almost a packed house, which was great to see. We even had some individuals from Somerset come over, and I hope that continues. That's for sure. This month, we're going to be partnering with Father's Heart, so I'm looking forward to that. And I think that's a great cause, and hopefully we'll get a lot of people out. Obviously, the more people that come and play, the more money they will generate. It's always fun working with the groups. I learn a lot about them, and also it's just I don't know. It's great to work together with everybody and have fun. We are also I want to remind everybody about the clothes closet. Saturdays 10 to 12. I always want to start it earlier, but it is every Saturday, and either donations or if you want to pick up some clothes specifically for your kids. It's always they have wonderful items there. Many of the things are actually new. We oftentimes put away items that have tags on them from the shops. So people donate new items. So that's fantastic. We're also working on the Arts Festival, which is going to be in June. Sarah's working on that, and they're going to be actually hosting bingo next month to help raise some funds for the festival. And it's going to be this year. It's going to be instead of on Portland Avenue, it's going to be at the center, the community center. Community center. I don't know if you noticed, but they have a new sign up there, and that was generously paid for by the Gladstone Education Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that does a lot of great things around for seniors. And finally, what was the last thing I think that's it. Oh, we are working on the festival. We're going to be holding the beer and the bingo. I know Michelle's working very hard, and I've been working with her to coordinate. And I know the city's going to do a great job on the festival, so it should be a lot of fun. If anybody has any questions, I'm here. So.
Yeah, we had a real good update from Michelle at our work session last month.
Great.
About the festival, and I appreciate the Rotary continuing to be involved in a key role in that. You said the Education Foundation, I believe it's the Senior Foundation that supported the sign.
Senior Foundation.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
sorry.
Let's
Yes.
give credit where
I
credit is
misspoke.
due.
Well, I'm on that foundation, so I should
Oh,
remember.
yeah.
They're going to get me at the meeting this Friday.
So thank you, Bob, for keeping us
All
informed
right.
of
Super.
community activity.
Thanks so much. It's always fun being here. All righty. Thank you.
Bob, can you remind us what day and time bingo is this month, please?
It's going to be on the 20th. Doors open at 4:50. Bingo starts at 5:30. Bingo Bill gets going around then, warms up his vocal cords, and then we end at 8. We serve hamburgers, hot dogs, drinks, and as I say, we get a full house, and it's a lot of fun. There's no doubt about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our regular agenda, which we start with the presentation from the University of Oregon Sustainable Cities Year Program, SCYP update. So Jackie, will you introduce that for us, please?
I'd be happy to. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I believe John Lagarza, which HSC Communities is joining us on Zoom tonight, as is a couple of our University of Oregon students. So I will let our city recorder get them on screen, and then John will do a brief introduction.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council. John Lagarza, Healthy Sustainable Communities. Pleasure to be here this evening. One of the things that we have been working on is looking at the opportunities around the tourism and public relations campaign for Gladstone. And with that, as we talked, we had contracted with the University of Oregon with their Sustainable Cities Year program. It's a nationally recognized program. The SCYP works with several cities in providing support. And during this last 2 months, we've worked with their public relations. Maya's here with us tonight, and it's been really wonderful with all of the 5 ladies that have worked on this. I think you guys are going to be really impressed. Again, this is a presentation to just start thinking about ways we could shape the tourism and marketing for Gladstone as we work through that this year. So with that, Maya and McKinley, we'll let you guys go. I think you should be able to share your slides there too, right, Jackie?
Yes, I believe Maya is a co-host.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Maya. And
Well, thank you guys. Good evening. Thanks for inviting us. We're very excited to present to you guys our presentation that we've been working really hard on. So my name is Maya Valverde. I'm joined with McKinley Beck. We are senior public relations students. The SCYP program, I think they partnered with our professor, who then we are then given the city of Gladstone as our client, which was very exciting. So we've been working on this for about 10 weeks, and now we have our final plan that I'm going to share my screen, and McKinley and I are going to walk you guys through it. So let me get this in presentation. Can you guys see that fine? Okay, perfect. Well, we are very excited to share with you guys our full PR plan for the city of Gladstone. We coined the hashtag glad to be outdoors because this is a very outdoor centric presentation. We have 7 people on our team that worked on this, and tonight, again, myself and McKinley are here. And so I'm a senior PR student. I have a little bit of a focus in crisis communication. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, but my family and we relocated to Portland about 10-ish years ago, and now they live in Milwaukee, so just a little north of Gladstone. And then someone on our team, Bailey, she is actually from Oregon City and went to Gladstone High School, so very small world.
Hi, I'm McKinley, and I'm from San Diego. And I plan to move back there after graduating from U of O this spring. And I'm looking to pursue a career in PR because I love working with clients. And I was so excited to work with Gladstone as a client. And I hope to see Gladstone grow to its potential. And I also had the opportunity to visit Gladstone with some of my other team members a couple weeks ago. And so that was really cool to see the town in person.
Perfect. So our quick agenda for our presentation, we're going to be touching on 12 different topics. And so the first third is going to be touching on our research, situational and competitor analysis. Then we're going to go into the big chunk of our campaign. And then we're going to round it out with measurement, timelines, budget, and then summary. And we are happy to answer any questions or any discussion you guys have for us after.
So first, we wanted to explain some PR terms that we're going to be using a lot throughout this presentation. Earned media is going to be that free publicity gained through media coverage, word of mouth, such as news articles, travel blog features, or local TV coverage. And then we have paid media, which would be like social media ads, sponsored posts, or digital ads promoting events. And then lastly, owned media, such as the City of Gladstone website, social media calendars, and event calendars in general.
So, research is the foundation of public relations. Our work is rooted in research, understanding our clients, and making sure that we are well informed, especially as PR students and as we go into professionals, as we become professionals. It's always said that PR professionals, they know a little bit about everything, and then we tend to our subject matter experts to go deeper. But on this, we try to become the subject matter experts. And so we know that we are talking to the fabulous people of Gladstone, and you guys know a lot. And so we're here to just share what we've been able to discover. And so when we were studying and researching Gladstone, we recognized that it does have the city has very strong natural assets, and it has the proximity of being very close to Portland. But one thing we noticed is that it's sometimes viewed as a pass-through residential community. And as we were talking with John and members of SCYP, that's something that really stood out to us that we wanted to figure out and attack with a structured PR campaign. And so through this, our goal is to increase tourism. And a part of this campaign, we're tackling two aspects. We have software, which is going to be our standard PR elements. It's going to be different types of media, social media, journalists, media lists. But then we also want to bring in hardware. So it's going to be talking about establishing new areas in Gladstone, building those areas, and then also expanding on different areas in the town. And we really want to create these physical anchors and events to give travelers and our audiences that we will talk about later a reason to stay and enjoy Gladstone and everything it has to offer.
All right, so getting into our situational analysis, we did a lot of research on where Gladstone is positioned regionally. And to note, small town, known for friendly community and natural attractions that appeal to both locals and visitors. And our goal here, again, is to increase tourism to Gladstone and awareness among the people in the Portland regional area of everything that the small town has to offer. And so we identified Gladstone's main competitors as Oregon City, Lake Oswego, West Lynn, and Portland. And these towns have similar assets to Gladstone, but we're not trying to make Gladstone a better version of anywhere else. We're trying to make Gladstone become the best that it can be and highlight the unique things that it has to offer. And we really want to capitalize off of how to emphasize Gladstone's current opportunities for tourism, as well as ways we can build on the assets that already exist that can draw more people to town.
And so moving to the competitor analysis, we wanted to specifically point out areas in Oregon City and Milwaukee that we wanted to research a little deeper, understand what is going on over there. And so Bailey was able to offer some unique insights to Oregon City since that's where she's from. But Oregon City, it's very historical. They have a really unique municipal elevator that offers a really great view. There's Corner 14, which is their popular food cart spot that a lot of people frequent, as well as popular downtown bars, building that nightlife. And they also do have some recreational aspects, such as their boating docks. And then going over to Milwaukee, there is a pretty new, I think maybe a year old, a little less, but they have a brand new brewery restaurant, Freem, which has their brick and mortar over in Portland, as well as a new coffee shop that shares the same building with the same brick and mortar mothership location in Southeast Portland. And they, in that area, they also have a historical wall, which has historical archives of what the building was before. And it was an old firehouse, fire station at one point. They also have what I call trending facilities, which will make a little bit more sense later in the presentation as we talk about our audiences, but they have a nice sauna, cold plunge space, and then they're renovating a brand new gym. They also do have a scenic riverfront and access to the river, as well as a very established main street that has reliable public transportation, a library, and a cute trending bookstore. And so, touching into our campaign and everything we've come up with, our goal was to increase the awareness and visitation of Gladstone among our two primary audiences, which is our regional travelers. They're going to be about middle age, and then our younger audience, which targets primarily Gen Z. And so we want to position Gladstone as an outdoor friendly destination, highlighting all of its outdoor recreational spaces as well as new events.
So starting off, we identified our primary audience as those middle-aged travelers in the Portland regional area, age range from 35 to 55 years old. And we found that in that demographic, there are primary decision makers that choose places to travel or take their families. They often make those plans through Google searches. And so we decided to focus on the individual experience of these travelers as well as families because their activities in Gladstone would be different. And so through our research on this primary audience, we decided to create personas to give you a tangible idea of who we may be targeting with this first part of our campaign strategy. So these are fake people that we used AI to create the potential people that would be interested in visiting Gladstone. So first, David, he's 40 years old. He's an individual regional traveler and maybe searching for something to do in the area on the weekend. And then we have the Miller Chen family, maybe a family of four looking for a fun event, water activity, or just something to do as a family near where they live in the Portland area. And so this target public also primarily makes these decisions through Google searches, like I said, in the next slide, rather than social media or social campaigns. And so we found that those personas and people in that age range ask Google these questions. And on the next slide. So we did like a mock-up of what these Google searches are, and these are real results, like real questions we put into Google and the results that came out of them. And as you can see, Gladstone isn't coming up on those results. So for our first objective and strategy for this primary audience of that age range, we decided we wanted to generate increased positive earned media coverage of Gladstone by providing media sources with ready-to-use content in the form of an established Discover Gladstone media kit, like the one that we conjured up right there on the right corner. And these publications would primarily include Travel Oregon, Willamette Weekly, Oregon Live, etc. And this kit would include high-quality photos of Gladstone, including the Clackamas River, Meldrum Bar Park, other popular destinations and food spots like the new brewery, and itineraries for families with young children or people passing through that can be utilized in event recommendations. And so this would also include maintaining a consistent engagement with journalists and bloggers and encourage ongoing media coverage through a media list of relevant reporters and outlets who could provide positive coverage of the city. So here we put together a media list of reporters and who they write for, their emails, and then what they typically write about. And so this would, they typically focus on the hidden gems and outdoor escapes that we think would reach our target audience. And it would also flip the script from the drive-through town to an accessible wilderness area using the 15-minute escape hook in our targeted personas to give journalists that ready-to-publish narrative for Portland's closest river reset. And so our second strategy and objective, we decided to utilize Meldrum Bar Park for some super fun summer events that could start in 2027 or 2028. We came up with 3 examples of fun events that we think could increase Gladstone's outdoor recreation by 15 to 20% annually. And these events are designed not only to increase visitation, but also to generate that media coverage by giving regional outlets something to cover. So the first event we came up with was the river rentals, and this would be a limited summer offer to draw people to the Riverside Park in the summer, especially since there are no water activity rental places in Gladstone currently. And this would also create a seasonal opportunity that could be promoted through both earned media and owned media, such as like the local travel features. And then another idea was the farmers market, which is an event that could occur once a week, especially if it was recruiting vendors from neighboring cities in the Portland metro area. And when I visited Gladstone, I noticed that there was that community garden very close by. And especially if that locally grown produce was being sold at the farmers market, that would make the market very unique. And then another idea that we had was music in the park. It would encourage people to hang out in the park for an extra couple hours, especially around sunset. There's plenty of bands eager to play for crowds in the Portland area. And so together, these events would support a mix of owned media promotion and earned media attention from regional outlets and potential paid media if needed, and would overall attract new visitors, draw more attention to Gladstone, and expand Gladstone's reach beyond its residents. And so here, these flyers for the music in the park, the river rentals, and the farmers market would give travelers a specific anchor to stop and stay, transforming Meldrum Bar Park into a high utility destination for families and recreation seekers rather than a passive landscape. And this is a website mockup that we also use AI to create. This would basically dominate that river recreation search that people are Googling or using AI to find. This would make it show up in those searches and on Google and AI for like regional weekend getaways that primary audience is looking up.
Absolutely. And another note on AI and generative search is that typically if you're using an engine like Chat or Claude, they are pulling, so those generative searches and those platforms, they're pulling things straight off of Google. Granted, it is always important to double check your sources that AI gives you, but it's getting its information from the web. And so if you build a website like this and it has the links and information and really hits on those keywords that McKinley was talking about that those audiences are looking for, then more than likely AI will pick up on it and, for example, use the Gladstone website as a source to look to. So moving to our secondary audience, we identified young travelers, typically between the ages of 22 and 30, and they are core Gen Z or the later millennials. And so we have two personas for this audience. There's Olivia. She is a full-time nurse. She's 28 and she is looking for cute coffee shops in the Portland metro area. And she's looking for an experience, somewhere she can go on the weekend, that it's not just to go in and out, but she wants to feel like she's experiencing something. And she looks to social media for all of her recommendations and where to go in the greater Portland metro area. And then you have our three gentlemen. They are young. They are looking for outdoor spots to go to that are low cost and also an experience. And so they're looking for something that's easy. They're looking on social media to get their recommendations. And more than likely, they will find their next spot on a platform like Instagram. And so you can see what they're Googling. And that, for example, one is where are the cutest coffee shops outside of Portland? And it's giving us McMinnville, Camas, and other greater metro areas. And then our three gentlemen are looking at where's somewhere fun that I can go to, but it doesn't cost a lot. And where can I go that's out to be outdoors? And Google's giving them the Gorge Loop and the Clackamas River. And so again, we can see that Gladstone isn't showing up, but our goal is for Gladstone to pop up on one of those three. And so our first tactic for this audience is to execute an owned media strategy. And so this is going to be looking at Gladstone's current social media platforms. And so on the left, we have a social media content calendar, and this is a little different than the one we're going to talk about at the end of the presentation, because this is specifically geared towards platforms like Instagram and to have a consistent brand presence. And that's really what we want Gladstone to establish, is that unique voice. And so on the content calendar, it tackles 5 different categories, and these are very flexible and can change based on needs. But right now we have restaurant features, then city updates, state and federal holidays that Gladstone celebrating, recreational features. So like we talked about in the previous audience, Meldrum Bar Park, and then upcoming events that our public should be aware about. And then to the right, we have a mock-up of what the Instagram could look like. And so this is using current brand colors that the city of Gladstone has, and it's giving it a refreshed look that has easy to read fonts, and our audience is going to know what to look for when they hit the homepage of the city of Gladstone Instagram. So there's our orange posts that show typically our audience will see it and go, that's important. And I need to look at that, like city updates, any construction that might affect daily routine. Then you have our greens, which could indicate volunteer in a volunteer event, something with the outdoors. And then you have our blue, which is usually indicative of a recycling event or something with the community or a summer event, something also outdoors, but slightly different. And so then moving over to our first event is what we called the first jump of summer. And so this is to utilize a space that Gladstone already has, which is High Rocks. And we want to position it as a summer swimming destination and highlight its areas that it has and really kick off the summer in Gladstone. And so what we'd love to do is partner with local food trucks and vendors, potentially music, and just have it as an inviting spot where people can start their summer off right and do it in Gladstone. And it's a really unique feature that Gladstone has because there are not a lot of swimming places that are not a pool that people love to go to. And if there's not High Rocks and if Gladstone's not using it, then our audience is going to have to look somewhere in Washington. And that could be anywhere from a 45-minute to an hour and a half drive. And what we want to do is we want to let our young audience know that there is a spot that is great for this and it's only 30 minutes away. And then our next tactic is Fuel of Gladstone. And this is one that we are really proud of, but and all credit to Bailey and her being from the area, but it is to turn the gas station that is on Portland Ave into a unique coffee shop and thrift store. And so like one of our personas that we talked about, Olivia, that's what our young audience is looking for. They love anything that is refurbished or turned into a different place. So a gas station to a coffee shop and keeping some of those old elements of the gas station. Anything that is vintage, a photo booth, I can tell you anyone in that age range is going to love it because it's something that captures a memory and you can look at it and it's something that is really meaningful. I mean, I will seek that out in specific towns. And so we really want to create a community gathering spot. And what better way than to flip a building and partner with local coffee shops, owners, definitely any Portland local thrift stores that are willing to branch into another location and ultimately create and increase visits to downtown Gladstone.
All right. And so for our messaging for our campaign, we decided would be take Portland Avenue to Gladstone for your next adventure. And we thought that this message emphasizes how close and accessible Gladstone is to nearby cities, especially in the Portland metro area. And by referencing Portland Avenue, it feels familiar, reminds people that Gladstone is already a part of their everyday routes, and overall suggests that a new outdoor experience is way closer than people realize. And for our measurement and evaluation, we recommend the 2 hotels that are currently in Gladstone tracking the hotel occupancy to continue doing that because it helps us measure how many visitors are staying overnight through the weekend because of these events, if they do happen. And we expect them to increase more people in the town and discovering that area and making it a long-term indicator of tourism growth. And then that we decided to utilize QR codes at events so that visitors can quickly check in when they arrive. And these codes will allow people to sign up ahead of time to attend as well, such as the high rocks and the food cart area or idea. And then this also helps track attendance as well. And then we will track earned media coverage from news outlets and other media sources. And this helps increase that awareness of Gladstone without relying on the paid advertising, and monitoring the growth of hashtags and geotags, which our generation loves to use, that second target audience, Gladstone on social media. And as more visitors tag that location or use hashtags, it would increase the visibility of Gladstone and make posts about it easier to find. And then lastly, that increased downtown visitation on that main street, longer or stronger local business sales should lead to more online reviews, and reviews on platforms like Yelp help improve visibility as well.
And so next we have our 2027 media roadmap, and we've sectioned it into 4 different quarters. And so looking at quarter 1, it's really laying the foundation. So it's establishing that brand presence that we touched on. It's acquiring professional photos of Gladstone, really laying the foundation of social media as well as website assets. And so building the platforms so then Gladstone can then execute campaigns and have a foundational space. So then next is quarter 2, which is building the momentum. So it's identifying the events, then it's promoting them and targeting those journalists and acquiring earned media to increase social media engagement. Then is quarter 3, which is the peak and launch point. So it's focusing on the major events with the emphasis on outdoor activities. And so we want to really push those events, really see if we're getting people to come and potentially RSVP, if we can acquire journalists to come out and view the space, and then also acquire more earned media that way. And then quarter 4, which is to sustain and reflect. And so after executing those events, looking back on them, seeing what went well, what needs improvement, and then taking all of that reflection and keeping it and applying it to future events, as well as continuously working on the social media, developing recaps, and posting that on the website. And
So here,
never mind, that's McKinley.
so here we have the monthly content calendar we created. It's an example of what one could look like in the year 2027 for Gladstone's campaign. And on the right side, you'll see the different content types and everything's color coded. And this is different than the calendar that Maya previously did present. That one was more everything based for the community for the Instagram. And then this one is more owned media privately for the council. And so at the beginning of the month, you'll notice that it's more content heavy. Everything is color coded, or sorry, everything is really heavy in the beginning of the month, and then that will build that early momentum that increases the visibility for Gladstone right away. And then moving towards the end of the month, the content will get lighter and continuing into consistent media awareness, because we're in that, as Maya just said, quarter 4 sustaining phase.
And so lastly, in our big campaign piece is the timeline and the budget. And so for our budget, a lot of the money is going towards audience 2, which is the young travelers. And that's primarily because of the gas station tactic and objective. And so renovating it and all of those construction costs, that is what's taking up the bulk of the budget. Whereas a lot from audience 1 or regional travelers, it's really centered around owned and earned media, which does not require much cost because it's not paid media and we're not paying for ads or any promotional aspects. And so a lot of that budget is towards audience 2 because it gears more on that hardware and the physical events. And so our summary of this campaign is that Gladstone absolutely has the potential to jump to the top of its surrounding competitors and really lean on what Gladstone has to offer and what makes it unique and how they can bring in these audiences that we've identified. And so by executing a 1 to 3 year PR plan, highlighting those recreational spaces, creating new events and experiences for our audience to come and enjoy, it can absolutely become a regional destination and a highlight of the outer Portland metro area. And so that is our PR plan. We are more than happy to answer any questions, any discussions that you might have for us.
Thank you, Maya and McKinley. It's really great to see the city through the eyes of somebody who maybe grew up nearby or has visited before, and I know you had a big team involved, so you had people maybe who have never really been to Gladstone, but they kind of picked up these ideas and understandings of how it's seen by people in the community. And in this era of AI and social media, most of us are probably not experts in the kind of things that you have brought to us tonight. So it's really good that through your experience and your learning, you can share with us some of these techniques. We can't rely on just word of mouth to promote our city. There's a lot of intentionality involved, and I appreciate that you've given so much thought to some possible ways of doing that and a kind of a structured way of promoting the city. So let me ask if there are questions or comments from members of the council. Yes, Councilor Mitchell.
The only slide that really jumped out as a question for me was the one advertising or sort of encouraging cliff diving. Because I wouldn't want to make more work for emergency services. So I just wanted to know more about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I fully understand. I come from two parents who worked in the medical field for a very long time. And my lights turned off in my office, but we're okay. So that idea came from a summer. So when we analyzed that target audience, we understood what they wanted. And part of that is a summer swimming spot, not going to be marketed as cliff diving, because you never dive headfirst into water that you cannot see all the way down. And so that's mainly as a swimming spot, whether it's not going to be jumping 20 feet off cliffs. And so that messaging is definitely something that can be figured out is if that event were to go forward. So positioning that messaging, surveying the area, seeing is this safe, making sure there are no rock slides or anything like that, and ultimately always putting the safety of anyone who's coming to that event, anyone in the town. Safety is the number one priority. So that is something that would not be marketed or promoted as cliff diving, but more so a swimming spot, and then of course taking the necessary safety precautions.
And I think there's a big difference between having people just kind of go somewhere on their own and them develop the rules, and having the city sort of take a little control and ownership of what goes on there, and maybe sort of changing the rules a little bit to something that we would be more comfortable with. But it's really great that you've honed in on some of these features of the rivers and the parks and the downtown. Other questions or comments? Councilor Garlington.
Okay, so I read the proposal or the staff report that we received, and I love your presentation. I think it has a lot of really great things in it. And what I want to know is what would you like from us?
That's a great question. I know we will be putting this presentation on paper and sending out our final PR plan. And so that'll be, I'm sure, just about 20 pages going in depth of everything that we just covered. And so there we'll have more fine print text of what this campaign looks like. And we worked really hard on this for 10 weeks, and I know that it would be awesome, but also maybe a little delusional to see any of this play out. But as always, I know there's a handful of folks with the city of Gladstone that have our emails. And so knowing, or the SCYP group. And so seeing if any of these do come to light would be awesome. I know we are building out our portfolios as we get ready to graduate. And so working on this campaign was a true pleasure. So seeing any of it come out to real life would be great to see. So if you guys do end up taking any of these ideas, we'd love for it to be forwarded to us.
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts, but at the same time, I understand that your project is what guides this. So I will send notes on to our fearless leader, our administrator, Ms. Betts, and she can either pass them on or not. And I will go from there. Thanks.
We are happy. We are going to be working on our final plan throughout this week and maybe the beginning of next. So we are completely open to any thoughts you guys have. And again, this is about the city of Gladstone. And it is, of course, important for our council members to tell us any thoughts, feedback, so we can implement it into the final plan. We're at a spot right now where we can adjust anything, make any edits or tweaks if you guys feel that that's necessary. So please send it over to us and we can add and edit and move things around.
Perfect. Thank you.
You know, presenting this as sort of an aspirational goal for the community, you would be surprised how many really creative and enthusiastic and energetic people we have here in Gladstone. Some work for the city, some are community members who, have often brought up similar ideas and get excited about the potential that we have. And I think this can be very inspirational to them and to us. And as you say, it would be surprising if it all played out exactly as you've laid it out here. But I think there are elements of this that will really excite people in our community. And now and then, we need that reminder of how we look to the world around us and how we can appeal to people who are, as you say, seeking a weekend adventure, something in the Portland metro area, not too far away, that really creates an experience and benefits this community at the same time. So I'm real pleased with what you've presented here. I think it will be something that can guide us and lead us in some great directions in the future. And anything else? Councilor Farley.
I also want to say I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. I feel like you guys really understand the essence of what makes Gladstone beautiful and wonderful to live in. I did have a question though. I saw you guys capitalize summer heavily, but what about winter and fall? Was there any considerations on how we can keep that momentum to make it to the next summer?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. And that's something that I noticed when we were going through the presentation as well. Absolutely. I know that sometimes the winter in Portland can be hard as someone who has lived in that area for about 10 years. And now in Eugene, it's not much different. And so there's definitely a lot of opportunity in the fall. Seasons change for the farmers market. Farmers markets typically go until October. And so we can bring that through the fall. And there's also produce and vegetables that their seasons change. And so there's definitely a potential of moving, let's say, a farmer's market indoors, because we know flu season is hard, but it just so happens that citrus is also in season during the winter. And so there's definitely seasonality aspects that can be carried through moving towards indoor events. If there's you can also plan on a general holiday event that could be carried through. Potentially, I know Oregon's big on growing Christmas trees, and so something on along the lines of that. And ultimately, I think seeing how the momentum, what the response is with the original plan, seeing that engagement, and then brainstorming more ideas for fall and winter.
Thank you.
Well, Maya and McKinley and all the rest of your team, thank you so much for all the hard work on this. This was a great presentation. It really got us thinking and inspires us. And so we're grateful to you for being here tonight. Anything else from staff on this?
No, John Lagarza and I are meeting on Friday, and we'll also discuss what the next steps are in relation to this plan. I can tell you that you know, our community center manager has already wanted to move Music on the Greens down to Meldrum Bar Park. So there are some real tangible outcomes in their proposal that I see happening.
It's great. Thank you. Okay. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda. We'll say goodnight to you students and thank you for being here. And John Lagarza is also helping to staff this. This is next item is considering the accepting the Gladstone Library Blue Ribbon Committee's recommendation. So Administrator Betts.
John, are you going to give a brief overview?
Sure, Jackie, appreciate it. And then, yeah, also just one last thing. We did have some inquiry also back to that last agenda item about, thinking about the kayaking and paddle boards down in Melbourne Park. So it's really interesting to see that they were captivating on that. But Mayor and Council, yes, thank you for the next item here regarding the disposition of the Gladstone Old Former Library there, 135 Dartmouth. We had a work session, I think it was last week and a half ago, talking to you about the opportunity here, going over really the well-done proposal there. We had established a survey with a lot of outreach within the community, several open houses. And so after that work session, we came back with the agenda item here tonight to get direction from you to consider moving forward with the potential DDA with the Weldon development for the old library site there. Happy to answer any questions there too.
We had this presented to us at a work session last month. And basically the recommendation that came back that we're considering is to convert the former Gladstone Library without demolishing it, kind of preserve as much of the building as we can for a new project which would be operated by Oregon City Brewing Company, which has a similar project in the city of Canby called the Canby Beer Library. So it's in our agenda tonight. There are some photographs and other things. The council has seen it. I don't know that the public has as much, but you can find it in tonight's meeting packet. There are questions or comments from council members. What we're looking for tonight is basically to instruct staff to kind of go ahead with negotiating the agreement. I guess that's the term I'm looking for.
Yeah, and just so you know, this will come back to you if we are able to reach an agreement, because the agreement's going to have the purchase price, disposition terms, a development timeline, standards, compliance, the public benefit commitment. So really what you're doing is you're allowing City Attorney Jacobs and I to begin those negotiations with the developer. That will all come back to you in a public meeting, and the agreement will be in a public packet for you to consider and approve at that time.
So what we've seen so far was a proposal from the prospective developer, and they had some terms and some dates and some other things that were just sort of, prospective, but not necessarily fine-tuned to what would work with the city and them together. And you would negotiate a more complete two-sided agreement on this process.
Yeah, like why 50,000? Why not 100,000? Things like that. Yeah. So, yes.
Very good. Are there questions? Yeah, Councilor Garland, I see your light on.
I'd just like to go back once again and thank the Blue Ribbon Committee, some of whom are sitting in this room. It's a lot of work to do it. You're stepping up. I've sat on the committees before I ever began with this. And, I want people to know that I respect 100% the work that is put into it and the thought process of it and the conversations had in order to come up with what that committee feels is the best outcome for whatever the project is. So I really do appreciate that. And I think that as much as there might be other things that we would all love to have happen in that building, it all comes down to business development. And I truly believe that what has been brought before us is going to work. And I trust our staff to make that happen. And I would be happy to make the motion once you ask for it.
All right. Let me see if there's any other comments or questions from council members. I do want to share, I mentioned earlier that we got some correspondence on that issue. I got a letter today from Mrs. Adams. She's a 5th grade teacher at John Wetton Elementary School, who forwarded me a copy of a letter written by 2 of her students. And the theme of the letter is very similar to one that we got back in July from a citizen who was talking about this very same project. Dear Mr. Milch, we were thinking the old library should be a community pool. We think our town's children don't have enough fun things to do. It's great exercise for our bodies to stay healthy, and it's super fun. We feel all of the other towns have community pools, so we think our town should have a pool. Please help us. And it's signed Elena Miller and Lucy Powell, 5th grade, John Wetton Elementary. And we received a letter from a citizen wondering about whether a community pool would be a possibility for this site. And it sparked staff to think creatively because she was concerned about the fact that the Oregon City pool, there's a good rate for Oregon City residents who live in that city and pay for it with their taxes, but it's a little harder to get past the waiting list if you don't live in Oregon City. And the Aquatic Center at up in Clackamas near the mall is owned by North Clackamas Parks and Recreation. And that again is something that we don't have quite the same access to as people that live within that parks district. So it is not the first time we've heard this. We responded in a great way. Jackie, you might remind us of what happened as a result of the earlier communication.
Yeah, so British Swim School teaches currently at Gladstone's 24-hour fitness. And so our community center manager met with him, and he is offering discounted classes to Gladstone residents, children that want to learn how to swim. So there's no wait list. You can get signed up, and it's in our community. And we're going to be putting out some more information on how people can, register for that. But those are the types of partnerships that we should be creating, especially in small communities where we just don't have the money to build and maintain a swimming pool. But I'm sure Chad and I'd be happy to negotiate that into this Gladstone Beer Library proposal, if you would like us to talk to him about that. But in all seriousness, yes, the 24-hour fitness and Gladstone British Swim School, they are teaching lessons for Gladstone residents.
So next year, we'll be doing a new set of, goal setting for the city moving forward. And having heard this comment now from a couple of different sources, we can always incorporate it into our thinking and our dreams for the future for what Gladstone could do. But I'm glad that staff, made a creative way of addressing at least one part of the need for a swimming site. There is High Rocks, of course, but I just wanted to, I promised the students I would share that tonight and let you be a part of it. I concur with Councilor Garlington. The committee did a great job. They thought about a lot of the pros and cons of things, but ultimately this is the proposal that came in. And I think it will add an anchor to our downtown area and be a good community site for people. And if we incorporate some of the other ideas that the students from U of O have suggested too, I think it would fit in very well with a lot of what they're talking about there. So Councilor Garlington, would you like to make a motion?
I will. It's written for us. I move to accept the Gladstone the Gladstone Library Blue Ribbon Committee's recommendation selecting Weldon development of the former library property located at 135 East Dartmouth, and to authorize the city administrator to work with the city attorney to draft a development and disposition agreement and begin negotiations with the developer, with final agreement subject to future council approval.
All right, Councilor Garlington has made the motion. Is there a second? I will second the motion. Any further discussion? All right, Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Blau,
Yes.
Counselor Mitchell,
Yes.
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Counselor Farley,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the motion passes 6-0. So Jackie and Chad, you have your work lined up for you. All right, next item is to consider approval of an ordinance amending 2 chapters of the Gladstone Municipal Code. And for a legislative hearing like this, we have a script that I will follow. And excuse me, I'll be reading this, parts of it, and I hope I get the right information in here. So the public hearing on ordinance 1544, planning file TXT 2601 is called to order. The proposed amendments would amend 2 chapters of the Gladstone Municipal Code to clarify design and dimensional standards applicable to accessory dwelling units. So the order of the business in this hearing will be to have a presentation of the staff report, entry of any correspondence into the record, public testimony, and I believe we had an individual who requested to provide testimony tonight on this. Additional staff comments, questions from the city council. Then we'll close the hearing and have no further testimony from the audience. We'll have discussion by the city council and make a decision. So on testimony, any interested person may present testimony concerning the proposed amendments. The public hearing is your opportunity to comment on the proposal before the city makes a decision. We want to hear what you have to say, and we want you to give us your point of view. Help us to understand why you've drawn your conclusion and how it relates to the proposal. Public testimony for this hearing will be called for in 3 groups: testimony in favor of the proposal, testimony opposed to the proposal, and neutral testimony. If you wish to speak, fill out one of the testimony forms and submit it to the city recorder. I will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through me. When you testify, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing is being recorded. If you are participating online, check the raise your hand button at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. If you are participating by telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. Now, at this time, I'd like to ask members of the city council if you are abstaining from this matter or need to declare any conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature of the conflict of interest and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing. So I will start down at the end with Councilor Huckabee.
No conflicts participating.
Councilor Mitchell.
No conflicts participating.
Councilor Blau.
No conflicts participating.
Councilor Farley.
No conflicts participating.
And Councilor Garlington.
No conflicts participating.
And I will declare a potential conflict. I do have a home with a downstairs basement, which is almost an ADU. It doesn't meet all the requirements. So this legislation that we're passing will potentially benefit or work to my detriment. And so I want that on the record. But I believe I can still participate objectively in helping the council make a decision on this matter. All right, at this time, we turn to staff to provide a report. So Heather Austin from 3J Consulting, our consulting planner, is here today.
Thank you, Mayor Milch. It's a pleasure to be here with you. We do have a short PowerPoint that we can pull up for this. Did I provide that to you? It's for the first one. Is it? We can, there's not that much in there. We can work without it too. Why don't I just start and then we can have the PowerPoint catch up with us. We started this project based on one of our council goals. So with the biennium 2025-26, one of the goals was to update our accessory dwelling unit standards. Oh, here we go. That was really quick. I'm going to just grab the clicker. Okay, So again, we began talking about accessory dwelling unit standards as one of our council directives for the Planning Commission's work program. This is something that the city has been meaning to look at. There is state law that requires any standards that apply to residential structures to be clear and objective. Our current code has some subjective design standards, the phrasing similar to or alike the existing property gives whoever's reviewing the ability to put their non-objective lens to it. So we wanted to make sure that our code was clear and objective, but that it also could maintain the community character. We didn't want to remove all standards for accessory dwelling units. We wanted to implement best practices too. So we did do some research about what other communities in our area are doing. We spoke with staff from Milwaukee, Oregon City, Westland, Lake Oswego, Happy Valley, Sandy, and unincorporated Clackamas County, just to make sure we got a really good view of what other communities were doing to make sure that what we were proposing was sort of in line with what our neighboring cities were doing, with the goal of updating our development code to achieve some of those clear and objective standards, but also maintain our community character. So with our interviews with our communities that are nearby, we did find that most ADUs were capped at a size of around 800 to 1,000 square feet. Nobody had a minimum size for their ADUs. That had not come up in any jurisdiction as being an issue a community had dealt with. The height limits were typically 25 or 26 feet. 26 feet is 75% of 35 feet, which is the typical height limit for a single family or a single unit structure. So that's why 26, it seems kind of odd. Usually we see things in zeros or fives, but 26 did seem to be more of the industry standard for that reason. There were not a lot of cities that regulated the number of bedrooms or front entrances. Again, none of our colleague cities had seen this as an issue to how these are being constructed because of the size and the dimensional requirements. They just weren't having issues with that. And we haven't seen really issues with that in Gladstone either. So regulations pertaining to accessory dwelling units are typically related to the size, the height, and the setbacks. Design matching requirements, again, were not common because those can be very subjective. Also, just anecdotally, a couple of times in reviewing accessory dwelling units for the city of Gladstone, we've had people say, I've saved up enough for the accessory dwelling unit and I'm going to make the siding really nice. And then my next project is to redo the siding on the main house. So I don't want to put the not as nice siding on the ADU, but I want to be able to finish this project and then move to the next one. So we were trying to find ways to make sure that that could happen while still meeting our code of matching similar. So we did have a few agreements with property owners that within a certain amount of time, they updated the siding on the house and that sort of thing, so that they could move forward and that the community would get a better product overall. And then in addition to clear and objective standards, we also have just state standards pertaining to accessory dwelling units. State does say that we must allow one for every lot that we allow a single unit structure to be located on. Again, clear and objective, no unnecessary requirements that would block accessory dwelling units. This is part of the state's push to have housing opportunity at all price points. Accessory dwelling units can lend themselves to be in the lower price point, and also, can be owner or rental occupied. They can be used by the folks that are already living on the site or be rented out as a secondary unit. You can't require separate utility connections to an accessory dwelling unit, which we already do not do. Can't require vehicle or bicycle parking, and can't regulate density. So City of Gladstone is already in compliance with most of those standards. It was really just the clear and objective piece that we needed to clean up. So we're proposing with the code that's before you this evening that our maximum size be 800 square feet, which it already is, or 75% of the primary structure, whichever is less. So if the existing home is a much smaller piece, we didn't want to have like equal size properties and have one be an accessory. That would be more like a duplex or type of dwelling where the housing is more of similar size. Maximum height, again, we went with a 26 feet because of it being 75% of the 35-foot height. And then similar to a lot of other jurisdictions, most notably next door, Milwaukee, menu of design options. So choosing 2 out of 5 gives a homeowner or property owner the choice of which they apply, but still ensures that we do obtain that higher design in some of those areas. And they're all numerical. So they all have a requirement that is easy to measure and ensure that it's meeting. So very, very objective. We're going to maintain our standards about 1 ADU per lot and maintain our existing setbacks. You will see in your packet that the setbacks are highlighted and they're just reprinted basically into the ADU section. And the reason for that is I get a lot of questions. What are your ADU standards? So I copy the section from the code and then I have to copy separately the dimensional standards. So this is really just to reduce the time I spend putting those emails together. It's the same information from the table just brought forward. And then finally, when we put this language together and sent it out to our agency reviewers, we did receive a comment from Clackamas Fire asking that we do require addresses to be very visible on all units. And so they were asking us to put that not just for ADUs, but for all residential units. So this would apply to cottage clusters or multi-dwelling sites. And so we did add that language into the code at the request of Clackamas Fire, and they did review that language and find it acceptable. So with that, and the planning, I should say too, the Planning Commission had 2 work sessions to discuss the language and go through the findings from the other jurisdictions. And they did have a unanimous recommendation that you approve the ADU code development updates. And there's a sample motion there. I would be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Are there any questions from city councilors for staff? We have a clean copy of the proposed revised section of the code in our packet, along with a copy that highlights the changes. So it's easier to spot the things that have been changed. And if it's not highlighted, it's unchanged. We're not dealing with it tonight, really. We're just incorporating the change part in the new. I want to say the photos you've show 2 examples of what we would call detached ADUs. But some of our regulations also relate to a situation which perhaps is even as common in Gladstone. Because of our topography, we have a lot of homes built on a slope. We have a lot of houses that have like a daylight basement, a basement you could walk out of or walk into that could potentially be converted to an ADU. And so we've designed some of our specification codes. Even though we have an 800-foot maximum, we also have a dimensional standard in there that says if your basement is larger than 800 square feet, but you're going to convert the entire basement to an ADU, you don't have to worry about the 800 square foot maximum. So we've tried to develop the codes or the standards in a way that fits the needs of the homes in this community. And all those split level homes that are on the hill and other places, they could potentially do a conversion, an interior conversion to have an accessory dwelling unit under these standards.
Thank you for that, Mayor Milch. And that standard is existing about the interior conversion, as well as, it's just harder to take a picture of that type of thing. But I will say that I would say it's about 50-50 that we review either like an above garage, like separate ADU, or a basement or some other internal conversion of an ADU. So you're right. This is an opportunity in this community that is taken advantage of.
And for the next item in the agenda, we are seeing an uptick in people doing this, correct?
We are.
This was part of our strategy for helping to address the shortage of housing in our community. Not all of these ADUs would necessarily be used for a person that's not even currently in the family now. Sometimes it's a means by which an elderly member of the family can have a home near their former home and have other people living in there or supporting them, helping them with their daily needs. A college student who's not quite ready to move out on their own could be in an ADU and still have the privacy of that. So there are a lot of reasons why people could do it. Some people build ADUs for the purpose of short-term rentals. Some of the rules and regulations regarding that are a little different. So, people need to be aware that there will be some different rules when it comes to that sort of a use. But for something that provides housing either for the current homeowner or potential new homeowner or renter, that's why we're making these changes. Councilor Blau.
Yes, I was actually going to ask about short-term rentals. I'm trying to remember if there was anything that was addressed in this about whether or not these can be used for short-term rentals, or are they primarily meant for month to month?
There's nothing that's being proposed that would address short-term rental use of these. In our next agenda item, we'll talk about the SDCs, and there were some cities that restrict, like if they're reducing the fees for SDCs, they'll say, but it's not for short-term rental, to make sure that it is going toward that housing front of things.
All right. Any other questions? I want to express appreciation to our planning commission for having at least 2 work sessions on this issue and some hearings and putting a lot of thought into this. I was on the planning commission myself more than 4 years ago when we began working on some of the dimensional standards. So this is kind of a long time coming, but the planning commission chose to delay a final approval of this so that we could kind of all be on the same page. And I appreciate the work that you and they put into this. So would someone like, now, we've said all that. Have we received any correspondence on this matter other than those items included in the agenda?
We have not received any.
Okay, and I mentioned public testimony. Actually, the person who requested to speak, it's on the items following this one. But does anyone present tonight wish to speak in support of this proposal? We always have to allow public testimony on a hearing like this, so I need to ask this. We had no one ask in
no one
advance.
online.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the proposal?
Again, no one online.
And no one in person? Does anyone wish to provide any testimony that is neither in support of or in opposition to the proposal?
Nothing online.
All right. And is there any further testimony or any further questions from the audience? All right, so I worked through this script. Now, staff comments. You have answered most of our questions, I believe. Any other comments you'd like to share, Heather?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Do any members of the city council have any questions regarding the testimony? Well, there was none. If there are no further questions, I will close the hearing to additional public testimony. So there's no questions, no comments to respond to. So the public testimony is closed. So the public hearing on file number TXT-26-01 is now closed to additional testimony. The council can now deliberate to a decision. Is there any discussion from the members of the city council? It sounds like you're ready to take a vote. Is there a motion on the proposal?
I'll make the motion.
All right.
I move to approve file TXT-26-01, updating Gladstone Municipal Code chapters 17.10 and 17.12, consistent with ordinance 1544.
I'll second that.
All right. Councilor Huckabee has made the motion. Councilor Blau has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Councilor, excuse me, Councilor Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilor Blau,
Yes.
Councilor Farley,
Yes.
Councilor Garlington,
Yes.
Councilor Huckabee,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the motion passes 6-0. So ordinance number 1544 is approved and the municipal code is amended. So we move next to item 11, which is a little bit on the same topic, but a little different aspect of it. And I had requested that we look a little bit into having a discussion on the Gladstone system development charges related, applicable to accessory dwelling units. And staff has done some research and prepared a report for us tonight. So I'll turn this back over to you, Heather.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Milch. So the timing of this was great because we were already looking at the ADU code language, and we'd already established these relationships with staff in the other communities that we researched, as well as a few others that had notable SDC ADU framework. So we reached back out to our neighboring communities and to see what they did, and it varied. There were a lot of different options, but just to lay the basic foundation, in Gladstone, as in other cities, there's two different types of system development charges, the reimbursement fees and the improvement fees, and they are a vital part of how our infrastructure is updated, maintained, and addressed. So I want to just make sure that we keep that part of the conversation in mind as well, because it's easy to look at what kinds of reductions might help property owners, but it's a balancing act, right? And you all do this all the time. You do the budget, you do all of these different pieces. So we did find that most jurisdictions that we talked to had either a reduction based on the size of the unit, or just did a simple half of a single unit development SDC. And then several of our neighbors are engaged in some pilot programs about either reducing or waiving SDCs for a certain amount of time. And again, that's due to, what is the impact on our budget for how we're getting things done in the city with this critical infrastructure too? And is it really impactful, or is it that the number of ADUs we're getting is a meaningful contribution to the housing in our community, but really isn't having that big of an impact on our ability to provide services? So I thought that was a really interesting, compelling thought too, like put something in place for a couple of years, see how it goes, and then have the ability to change it or keep it if it's working for the community. So your packet is full of research that was done by a colleague of mine who is on the video call if we have deep questions about that. But I'm happy to answer questions and talk through the discussion pieces here. Really tonight, what we're asking you to do is either direct us or not to continue this and come forward with a work session. I believe in a couple of months, we were thinking that would be appropriate, because if we wanted to make changes to SDCs, we'd be aiming to do that with our July master fee schedule update. So coming back in, I believe, May for a work session would give us the time to be able to meaningfully do that. So are there any questions about the information in the packet?
So just to be clear then, we have this information and this research that you and your staff have done for us to help inform us on whether we should go forward with the work session and
Right.
consider some of these ideas, but we're not expecting to make any changes tonight.
No.
This is just introducing this.
Yes, exactly. This is I know we didn't really give you a lot of time with this information. There's a lot here. There's a lot to consider. So we'd like to actually spend some time in a work session format where we can have a robust discussion, but we wanted to get it on your radar. We did have some recent discussions with some property owners in Gladstone, one of whom is here tonight and would like to talk to you about how SDCs are impacting his decisions about an ADU. So we wanted to provide the opportunity for that to happen and to see if this conversation could go forward.
And I really want to hear from that citizen. I want to ask you one question first, just to make it to understand. Some of these SDCs are related to water and sewer infrastructure.
Mhm.
We talked before, some people do an SDC interior to the home. Maybe they convert a basement by adding a kitchen and a bathroom. Some people do a brand new building in the backyard or on some other part of the property. Presumably, a detached ADU requires a connection to existing sewer facilities. You don't usually have sewer pipes running through your backyard. So how does an ADU charge that's connected to the sewer system differ from whatever charge a city might impose on connecting a new structure to the sewer system? Does one do both, or are they two separate fees?
They're two separate fees. So there's a system development charge and there's a utility connection fee. So in the case where you are not adding utilities to the site, maybe you have that internal conversion, you may not have as much of a utility connection fee, but you would have an increase in your system development charge because right now it would be then two EDUs, the dwelling unit, effective dwelling unit on the property. So that would be the same whether it's detached or attached. It'd be two dwelling units essentially. So right now it charges at about the same as putting a whole new home on the property. There's also monthly utility fees. So that increases too based on that EDU calculations. That's another consideration, but that hasn't been a big issue because it's a matter of maybe $60 or $70 a month that is a double sewer fee. So it hasn't been something that's been as meaningfully impactful as the $25,000, $30,000 SDC upfront costs to be able to do an ADU. But the utility connection fee is separate from the SDC. And so in that standalone separate, if you are having to change your utilities, if you're having to increase your water line size to support the increase, you'd need a whole new water meter, a new connection there, which all include fees as well.
All right. So Tammy, we had a citizen who asked to come and speak tonight, and this would be a good time to hear from them.
Jonah Watkins.
Hello, Jonah. Welcome. Have a seat. If you push the button, the microphone will come on, and we'd love to hear what you have to say.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, so push the button on the microphone in front of you.
Okay,
There.
you guys got me?
Got you.
Let me pull up my notes real quick. I just wrote some today. There's a lot to talk about. All right. Hey, Council. I'm Jonah Watkins. Nice to meet you guys. I just moved to Gladstone recently. I'm here to talk about SDC fees associated with ADUs in Gladstone. I've known about Gladstone since I was a kid, going to High Rocks in the summer. That's how I found out about it. Kind of funny. I really like this town. It's one of the main reasons I bought a house here back in October. Because it's got great neighborhoods and then you got the river right there. It's just really nice. So let's see. So I'm an Oregonian. I make just about like your average Oregonian's wage. When I bought that house, about 85% of my take-home pay goes to my mortgage right now. I had the original idea of creating an ADU downstairs, just like you were talking about. It's the daylight basement to help supplement some of that mortgage. So essentially, I have 15% of my income for like food and utilities and stuff like that. Gladstone has gone from an average home owner's age of 24 years old to 44 years old in just a few decades. I just looked that up online. So Gen Z and millennials, kind of like my age group, is kind of being priced out of the market here in Oregon. And being able to like make an ADU to supplement some of that mortgage could help a lot for first-time home buyers, especially since Oregon is in the bottom 5 of all states in the US for housing affordability. Being able to make ADUs, I think, would be a good idea to help with some of that. So let's see. This is my first house, and I bought it with the intention of making an ADU. And I did not realize that Gladstone had really high fees when it came to SDCs for like water, sewer, transportation, parks, and stuff like that. So I saved up for years to buy this house. And the SDC fees, it turns out, just to put an extra shower and 2 sinks downstairs, just with the SDC fees, would be almost double my down payment on the house, which is pretty nuts. So Gladstone is among one of the highest of all SDCs in Oregon. This, I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is from the WES website. It's the methodology paper, and these are all cities in Oregon, and Gladstone has the highest on all of these for SDC fees for water and sewer. So I looked up today, just like a comparable city. I came up with Astoria because it's similar demographic, similar population, similar infrastructure needs because it's an old coastal town. For like a 1-inch water meter, which you kind of see in like a house and an ADU, a 1-inch water meter in Astoria is $6,600 SDC fee. Here it's $16,700, which is $10,000 more than Astoria. A sewer SDC in equivalent units is $1,400 in Astoria. Here it's $7,200, which is 5 times more than Astoria. Not to mention that Astoria's water bill is half the cost of my water bill here. And then Heather, you did a great job on your stuff talking about how, you get an ADU and then it increases the monthly water bill and stuff like that. So this causes a high barrier of entry for buying and building homes, especially for first-time home buyers. The city council, I read on the website, and the Gladstone Comprehensive Plan, I quote, "Perhaps the most important thing of this city is to provide people with a place to live. That includes building up and not out due to your guys's landlock issue. Provide housing to all ages, stages, and wages. Utilize housing resources to maximize utilize housing resources to the maximum, minimize housing costs, and promote and preserve the integrity, aesthetic, quality, and compatibility of neighborhoods." And to me, ADUs fulfill all of those objectives to the goal of providing housing to, all ages, stages, and wages. And it also, helps supply more affordable renting options, keeping the charm of the neighborhood feel of the houses and not having to build a bunch of apartments and, multifamily dwellings. It kind of just keeps it the single family neighborhoods. That is why I moved here. The neighborhoods are really nice. And it helps people like me be able to afford your first time house by, renting out to a couple roommates, being able to afford that super expensive mortgage. So there's several hundred, maybe 1,000, I don't know how many split level homes are here in Gladstone. There's a lot, and I'm in one of them. And they can easily be developed into ADUs, but a big barrier to me is the SDC fees. So I calculated the cost to be about $8,000 for my conversion to an ADU. And she said it generally just SDC fees was going to be $19,000 to $28,000, not including if I have to upgrade my meter, not including permit fees, just anything like that. So I think helping reduce those, or doing like what Portland did maybe, or some other cities where you can waive the fees for a certain amount of time, or just give like an equivalent version of fixture units. Like if I'm putting in an extra shower and 2 sinks, like equate that to a whole house rather than having each of those be its own SDC fee. So I think that would help. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
All right, Jonah, thank you. That's really good hearing directly from somebody who's tried to look into these numbers themselves. Obviously, it gives us a reason to say we do need to look at this a little. I serve on the advisory committee for Water Environment Services, which does sewer and water for a lot of this region, Happy Valley and Oregon City and Westland and everywhere. And we had to update our SDCs for people who live in the areas served by WES. And some of our residents also have to pay WES SDCs on certain property improvements. And we did a methodology where we came up with a number that was considerably higher than the current level. And I thought, well, you go from this low number to the new high number. But when it came time for the governing body, which is the Board of County Commissioners, to act on it, they said, no, let's phase it in over 12 years. Let's have, take it a little step at a time so that you didn't have this huge increase. And I don't recall us ever kind of thinking about it in those terms in Gladstone. There's a methodology for calculating the SDCs based on projected future things that we need to do to improve the city, to improve our parks, to improve our transportation infrastructure. But why a new development would need to pay that whole cost all at once is something we didn't really consider. So I think your testimony is helpful in motivating us to take a closer look at these, to really look at the comparison of the SDC charge with the actual development charge. I subscribe to a home magazine where I see articles every month, and this is the cute little ADU this couple built in their backyard for $300,000. And I see another one say this is for $400,000. And I know based on my own home that some minor modifications to a home that already has maybe a bathroom in the downstairs basement could turn it into a livable space for what you described, a very modest investment. And if you're willing to live with a hot plate and a microwave, and not a gas stove and oven, you could have a living space and not even qualify as an ADU and still get some of the advantages of that. So I think if we really care about people who want to get the best value out of their homes and care about providing a lot of housing options to people in the community, I think we need to listen to people like you and to reflect on these numbers and see whether they're really user-friendly or not. So I appreciate your testimony. Comments from other members of the council? Councillor Blau.
Yeah, I really think we need to take a quick look at this. We are as you mentioned, a landlocked city, and we are really trying to encourage the maximum use of all of our existing dwelling units. I think it's really important to take a peek at this. And I was particularly interested in some of the programs that other cities had where they could reduce the SDCs if you signed an agreement for low-income housing. I think that would really be a good benefit for our community.
In some cases, they were just signing an agreement that you wouldn't use it for, turn it into an Airbnb that is some kind, can be a strain on the resources of a community, and instead have it for somebody who would, make an investment to live there permanently. Other comments, questions? Councillor Farley.
Oh, actually,
No, you go.
oh, thank you. Actually, I had a question. If the worst case scenario for your position were to happen, have you calculated how much more you would have to charge to eat away from that seed money that you lost to pay these extra fees and fines?
Could you say that again? Sorry.
Yeah, so if you got your wishes, right? Ideal world, you're going to charge X dollars. If your worst case scenario happened, did you calculate how much more you would have to charge to make up that difference?
Charge in what? Like
in rent, or because you're renting out the ADU, right?
No, I haven't done a.
But if you were to, that's the goal, right?
That would have been the goal, yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand what the effects would be for you long term, because it's going to take more seed money to make it a proper ADU by the SDU standard, right?
I think I understand what you're saying. So you're okay. Can you rephrase the question one more time?
Yes, and I apologize if I'm not portraying this very well.
You probably are. You're doing it just fine, I bet.
I'm probably not. If you got your wishes, you know how much it's going to cost to finish this project, right? Did you already calculate how much you were going to potentially charge for rent to recoup your losses and make a profit to eat away from your mortgage?
Oh, I see. Yeah. I had calculated that before I bought the house, unknowing of the SDC fees. If that's what you're asking.
Yes. So, because the way my brain works is every month, how much is this going to hurt you, right? So how much more will you have to charge if you had to pay the full fees that were being presented today?
Oh, I see. Over making I see what you're saying, over a certain amount of time,
Mhm.
however long that is. Are you asking for an actual number?
Just ballpark. I'm just curious. Curious.
I was probably going to charge $800 to $1,000 in rent for a full furnished downstairs.
Mhm.
With the amount of fees to recoup with, even in 10 years, I'd have to double that,
I understand.
No, not quite double. Maybe charge $400 more a month.
Okay. Thank you. It helps me quantify how much damage this is doing to you over the course of time, because now if you're asking for a higher pay cap, you're shrinking your availability for renters, right? So by having it where you can fluctuate that number, you have more choices, more people have an ability to move into your residence. So that's why I'm trying to understand how bad this is going to affect you over time, not just today.
Okay, I see. Hey, thanks for clearing that up.
Thank you. Councillor Garlington.
Well, I appreciate you coming forward, because I do think it's interesting to see, a project you were going to do on your house in order to be able to live in it so that you weren't mortgage poor. That's not sustainable based on the barriers that are caused here. So, and with that, I was looking at the information that your group had provided here, and I'm thinking to myself in columns, okay, I'm going to build an ADU so that when my family comes to visit every other summer or every summer, I've got some place to put them that's not in my house. I mean that very kindly. And then you've got the next set of people that, want to do an Airbnb, and then that month-to-month rent type of person, and or someone that has a rental unit and wants to put a secondary rental unit on that. So there's a lot of different columns of people, and the costs that come with it where we could or could not, or where we would choose or not choose to reduce that to make it better for a homeowner, especially one that lives on their own property, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. So I appreciate this work, and I'm really interested to hear what more, comes of this. I only had one question. When you have an ADU that's put onto a property, what does it look like on their tax statement? Is it just an overall, even if it's a second address, or how does that work?
I don't know. And
Oh,
so
okay.
I can add that to what we
Okay.
bring back to you for further discussion, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Generally, an improvement to a property that raises its value considerably will trigger a reassessment. And the county tax assessor would say, well, you didn't just fix your roof or fix your plumbing, you added considerable value to your home. And if the homeowner is responsible for both, they'll look at the property and say, well, now your $500,000 house is worth $650,000. And your assessed value before was $250,000, because right now assessed values are about 50% of your market value. So if we're going to assess the value based on your new market value, we'll have to increase your assessed value from 250 up to 325, which is 50% of 650. So that's an example of how that works for people who make major improvements and investments into the value of their home for something other than, maintenance.
So are you talking in their home, or are you talking about a whole nother building? That's what I think I'm referring more to that.
If that whole other building is a building on the same lot, the same tax lot, it would all be part of the same thing. So,
okay, good to know.
Chad, did I get that pretty right? I should turn to my attorney for things like this, but
You did a perfect job explaining it.
okay. All right. So, and that's another issue then so what I'm hearing is you really would like to do this at a work session in the future in time for us to maybe take some action at our July meeting, either to change these or decide not to change them. You said it was a balancing act. We'd have to look and consider some things. Administrator Betts, you had some additional information for us?
No, I was just going to say that is correct. The Public Works Director, Heather, and we would like to have a work session in May to talk about these options. Jonah's been great. Our Public Works Director has been working with him to try to creatively find a solution. So we appreciate that he's here to give his testimony tonight.
One of the other solutions, possibly that some places have recommended too, is the ability to pay some of these SDCs over time, so that rather than coming up with $15,000, $20,000 in a lump sum, you could say, all right, you could pay $2,000 a month for 10 months and then cover it that way. And that might be another option we could consider. So it's just a policy matter to make it so everybody wins. I think we'll do that. So thank you. We'll put that on our agenda for May, and hopefully we'll have some answers by then. Appreciate your testimony tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item. We have some appointments to make to some of our city boards and
Mayor Milch,
committees. Yes.
We added a new number 12 tonight.
And are we going to do that before those? Yes. Okay. All right. So that'll be regular number 12, and then we've got 12A and 12B after. All right. If you'd like to introduce number 12.
Yes, so I think what I'll do, Mayor Council, is I'll do a brief introduction, and then I'm going to have Chad weigh in on some legal aspects of this and see if the council has any questions. So this item's been added to tonight's agenda in response to questions and concerns raised within a neighborhood regarding whether the state licensed adult foster care homes are required to obtain a home occupation permit under Gladstone Municipal Code, Chapter 1778. You are familiar with this conversation. House Bill 2005, which exempted adult foster care homes in residentially zoned areas, went into effect after the city updated our home occupations code in 2025. What I want to do is go over the purpose. I'm going to read to you Gladstone Municipal Code 1778.010, the purpose of the home occupation. To number one, permit residents an opportunity to use their homes to engage in small-scale business ventures, which could not be sustained if it were necessary to lease commercial quarters or because the nature of the activity would make it impractical to expand to a full-scale enterprise. And number two, establish approval criteria and standards to ensure that a home occupation is conducted as a lawful use that is subordinate to the residential use of the property and is conducted in a manner that is not detrimental or disruptive in terms of appearance or operation to neighboring properties and residents. So in our code, here is the definition of home occupation. It's 17.06.220. Home occupation means an occupation, profession, or craft which is customarily incidental to or carried on in a dwelling place or premises, and not one in which the use of the premises as a dwelling place is largely incidental to the occupation carried on, and which occupation is carried on by an immediate member of the household residing within the dwelling place, provided, however, there shall be no structural alteration or changes in the dwelling or on the premises, and there is no display of merchandise, storage, materials, signs, or articles or objects awaiting or in the process of repair, remodeling, or modification on the premises, which can be seen from the exterior of the dwelling. Noise, odor, smoke, gases, fallout, vibration, heat, or glare resulting from the use shall not be the intensity as to be detected outside of the containing structure. Our interpretation under both Oregon state law and Gladstone zoning code, state licensed adult foster homes are considered residential uses and not home-based businesses. And because of that classification, we have shared with the neighbors that they do not require a home occupation license and are not regulated under Chapter 1778, which City Attorney Jacobs can elaborate on. I also want to have City Attorney Jacobs go over what the legal implications to the city would be if we restricted or denied these homes, specifically in relation to Oregon state law and to the Federal Fair Housing Act. So with that introduction, Chad, I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about the legal aspects, interpretation of the code.
Sure. Thanks, Jackie. And for the record, Mayor and Council Chad Jacobs from the City Attorney's Office. So I'd like to, if you'll just indulge me for a couple minutes, just sort of take a step back and sort of explain things at a pretty basic level, just to make sure that we're all on the same starting page. And so, some of this will probably be information that you all know, but, for those who may be online or in the audience who may not be as familiar with how cities do zoning codes and things of that nature, I think it's worthwhile to have this conversation. And so, in the most basic sense, when a city does land use planning, it's going to go through and adopt a zoning code. And what that zoning code does is it outlines allowable uses in various areas of the city. And speaking at a very general level, typically we divide the city into three different types of areas: industrial areas where industrial uses are allowed, commercial areas where commercial uses are allowed, and residential uses where residential uses are allowed. Now, of course, there's some mixed zones and there's overlay zones and other things that make this a lot more complicated than that, but I'm just going to keep it at this very basic level for the purposes of this conversation. So generally speaking, in a residential zone, we only allow residential uses. We don't allow commercial uses. However, we do recognize in the code that there are times and situations where people run businesses out of their homes. And when those businesses don't otherwise have a commercial nature, and it could be someone who is an attorney, for example, who just deals with clients over the phone and online. They don't have clients coming to their house. Maybe they go to court on occasion. and they just don't want to rent an office. They just want to work from home. Or it could be someone who hand makes jewelry at home, sells the jewelry online or goes to craft fairs or farmers markets, but doesn't necessarily sell goods out of their homes. Those are kinds of examples of home occupations that we would typically see and require a permit for. And so what the code does is it creates this exception in the residential zones and says, if you're going to engage in these kinds of activities, you can do so, even though typically we only allow residential uses in a residential zone, but you have to get a home occupation permit. And so when you look at the language that Jackie just read to you, it uses the word incidental. The primary use of the property is, using it as a dwelling, as a residence. But then there's this incidental use for commercial activities that we're going to allow because it's not really having an impact on the neighborhood. And so that's the general framework in which we're working under. However, there are times when the state comes in and the state says, notwithstanding your general authority to regulate the land uses in your various zones, we're going to come in and say there are certain uses that we're going to just mandate are allowed in certain areas of your city. And so that's exactly what they did with these adult foster care homes and other sorts of residential facilities of a similar nature. And what they basically said is the state came in and said, notwithstanding your zoning codes, you have to allow these uses in residential zones. And so, it's kind of a state legislature came in and said, we want to allow movie theaters in every residential zone. So that would just basically preempt our ability to say, we don't want commercial activities in residential zones, and we would have to allow movie theaters, even though they're commercial, in this residential zone. And the same thing sort of happened here with adult foster care facilities. And so even though it's a little more confusing because the service that's being provided is residential in nature, it's really a commercial activity. And so the state came in and said, notwithstanding your residential zoning prohibitions, we're going to force you to allow these types of facilities in all residential zones. And they've got their public policy reasons why they mandated that. And so they've done that. And so now we are required to have these homes in all residential zones. But the underlying purpose of these facilities is commercial in nature. It's just like the movie theater. So the underlying business in and of itself is just being located in a residential zone. It's not that there's a business going on at that property that is incidental to that commercial purpose. The purpose is just generally commercial in nature to begin with. And so that's why when you look at the code and the code language that Jackie just read to you, the idea that we would require a home occupation permit just really doesn't fit. You're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It just doesn't really match up to saying that you have this commercial business that we're going to require a home occupation permit for in this residential zone. Because the state basically said we just have to allow these commercial activities to go on. Conversely, if a resident of one of these adult foster care homes decided to engage in like the jewelry making business that I talked about before, they would need a home occupation permit to engage in that secondary business. But the business of the foster home itself is not a home occupation as it's defined by the code. And, I understand, you could try to make an argument the other way around. You could try to make an argument that this is still a commercial use in a residential zone. So therefore you need some sort of home occupation permit. But to the extent that there's any ambiguity, a court is going to look at this and err on the side of saying it's not required. It's going to have less regulation. And they're doing that for two reasons. One is that, the preemption that I just talked about in state law, the state has basically said that we have to require these things. And because we have to require them, we don't have the option of imposing additional restrictions that would somehow preclude them in these residential zones. We can't sort of do indirectly what we're not allowed to do directly kind of argument. And equally important is that there are federal laws, such as the Fair Housing Act that Jackie mentioned, that basically require us to provide opportunities for individuals with disabilities to have an equal opportunity to enjoy housing in these zones. And so if we would try to enforce a code that's ambiguous to try to preclude these types of facilities in residential zones, we'd be putting ourselves in a situation where we'd have potential legal liability under the Fair Housing Act and similar federal laws. And so there's lots of litigation that's gone on all over the country related to these types of facilities where local jurisdictions have done things to stop them from being located. They've been sued under these federal laws and lost and had significant penalties because of that. So because of those two things, yeah, it's likely that a court and, frankly, the advice from our office is that you don't want to interpret any ambiguity on the side of precluding these homes. You'd rather err on the side of caution and, allow these homes in the zones and not, impose additional requirements. So based on all that, we've talked to staff, we've given them this advice, they've shared this advice with members of the community. Notwithstanding that, there's still, some ambiguity in the code. And so, just like we did with the family childcare homes, we could add language to this code section just to clarify this, and just make it abundantly clear so you don't run into this situation again where the public feels misled by the ambiguity. And I certainly understand where they're coming from. This is not to minimize their concerns, but it is really just to say that, this is not, a tool that we can really rely on to preclude these types of facilities in residential zones. We can certainly, like I said, amend the code, go through the process of amending the code to make that more clear if that's something the council wanted to do. And then finally, I would say, and I believe, maybe this is a city administrator Betts would want to talk about this more, but there are other things that the city can do to try to assist with these situations. So for example, the city could help coordinate a meeting with the developers of the adult foster home and the neighborhood to try to come up with a good neighbor agreement, to make sure that any of the concerns that the neighbors have would be addressed through one of these types of agreements where, everyone's sort of on the same page going in. And then finally, what I want to stress is that, there are other rules and regulations that are still going to apply. So you've got, building code requirements and health and safety code requirements that are still going to apply to any use of property within the city. And so, this isn't a sort of carte blanche, what I call get out of jail free card for, these types of facilities or any other type of property in the city, but they still have to abide by those general laws and regulations. So that's kind of what I had prepared in sort of my brain tonight to share with you. I'm happy to expand upon any of that, answer any questions that you may have, and also turn over to Jackie or Heather in case they wanted to supplement anything that I just said.
Chad, I have another comment. Administrator Betts, you mentioned that we had recently changed the language in the municipal code related to home occupation permitting. And that was because a situation came up where someone who had a home occupation permit was doing some things, practicing their business in a way that some neighbors felt violated the spirit of what those rules required. And so it caused us to examine them and also to look at our enforcement of those rules. So if somebody is tutoring in their home or giving piano lessons in their home, the traditional kinds of a home occupation, because we provide that permit, we also have the right to deny that permit if they don't follow the rules and limitations that go along with it. Who regulates how a foster care home operates in a community? The city does not. Am I correct?
That is correct. And before I answer that question, also remember the reason why we did a very elaborate amendment to the home occupation. It was when we're coming out of COVID and a lot of people started working from home and we wanted to make it more business friendly for them. So that aspect played into why we did an overhaul of the home occupation permitting process that we did.
So we could say that someone who works for a company outside the city of Gladstone, but does a lot of the work for that company within their home, is not running a home occupation. We had some clear exemptions to what does or does not constitute.
Correct.
Okay.
And as Chad had mentioned, adult foster care facility or a child care facility must be licensed by the state. So if this property does want to become an adult and foster care home, they have to go through probably a 11 to 12 page certification process by the state. If there are complaints that are coming in, whether they're to the city, we would work with the appropriate officials at the state because they would oversee that facility.
Okay. And one other thing to update the members of the council who may not be familiar with this particular situation that raised this concern. Right now, what we have is a home which was purchased And there is presumably some construction changes being made to the home in order for it to be able to be used as an adult foster home. But it is not currently being operated as such. And we don't even know if there is a potential buyer to operate it.
That is correct. When we met with the neighbors, we also did offer, like Chad said, to broker a meeting with the property owners and the neighbors to talk about the issues that they brought forth to us in a good faith effort. But that could be difficult if you're dealing with somebody who's building it to flip it. So you want to follow that process to see who's the appropriate property owner to have a meeting with.
And the other issue on building it to flip it, we just had a big discussion about system development charges. And when we know that a home is going to be modified that will change the number of dwelling units within that house, there are system development charges that must be paid to the city before a building permit can be issued for some of those modifications to be made. And at this point, I think we're not sure whether those fees have been paid for those permits. So there may be some legitimate issues with this particular house related to building permit through the county. But I think, Chad, you've explained how that is distinct from the issues of home occupancy. Now, I understand we have some residents who would like to testify in this issue. Oh, Councilor Garlington, go ahead.
I think I might be slightly confused when, Chad, you were talking about a business in a business district, rather a business in a home area. Tell me again are there clarifying differences or not really based on the fact that this is an adult foster home?
It's that the adult foster home is in and of itself a business, and the state has come in and said that we have to allow this business in a residential zone. We don't have the authority to say, because it's commercial in nature, it's not allowed to be in a residential zone.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be lived in by someone that owns it. It's just an allowable business.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of these, the owners don't live in them. They have residential caregivers who stay with the residents of the adult foster home, but not all, it's not required under state law that the owner of the facility live at the residence.
Okay, thank you.
And as Administrator Betts said earlier, there are very onerous regulations and requirements for this. I discovered online a Facebook group of owners and operators of adult foster care homes. There are about 6,000 members, and they pester each other with questions every day about the requirements of licensing renewal, of hours that people worked, of tier 1 care, tier 2 care. It is a business I would never have the patience to get into because it requires so much. But it tells me that it is very well regulated by the state, and and that there is enough interest in it that people are always saying, here's a home that's available. It already has 5 residents, but I want to sell it to someone who is qualified and licensed to operate it. It is a big business, and we have a number of these homes already in residential neighborhoods in Gladstone. How often do we get complaints from residents about the operation of our home foster care?
We haven't had any. They fit right in with the community, which is part of the intent of putting them in residential areas. So we have not had issues. We do foresee more of these coming into Gladstone. I believe we've had inquiry today on another location.
Yes, they all come through the building permit process to convert from a residential use into an adult foster care. The Clackamas County requires a change of use permit, even if you're not changing anything physically on the site. But to be able to get the state licensing, you must demonstrate that you've obtained change of use through Clackamas County first. And so those will come to Public Works and to me to review every one of those.
Okay, so it's definitely on our radar now, maybe more than it was. So I appreciate the residents calling it to our attention and helping us to become informed so that we're making proper decisions. I want to give Mike and Tony another chance to share with us your concerns, because you've invested some time and you've
Can I
talked
ask
to
a
your neighbors about it.
Mayor, can I ask a clarifying question real quick?
Sure, you can. Go ahead,
Were
Councilor
you
Farley.
saying that the current owner of the home is thinking of letting a corporation start an adult facility in their home, or is the current owner selling it to a corporation that wants to turn it into adult foster care?
A former owner just a few months ago put the home on the market, and someone bought it and indicated that they were intending to remodel it to put it's either new bedrooms in the basement for the workers with the residents living on the upper floor, or vice versa. I think that's probably it, because that's more accessible.
Okay.
So they were going to modify the basement to allow live-in caregivers to live in the home, changing a 5-bedroom home to a 9-bedroom home, essentially.
Okay.
But the person who bought it is not the person, to our knowledge, is not the person who intends to operate the facility. They're going to change it, and as Administrator Beth said, try to flip it to somebody who does need that. But as I said, from my observations of that Facebook page, there are a lot of people out there that I guess there is a market for homes that can be used that way.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
All right. All right. We have some residents of the neighborhood who would like to speak.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I do want to acknowledge that we did indeed have a meeting after we briefly appeared for 3 minutes last month at the council meeting. And Jackie was kind enough to offer us a meeting with herself, Heather, and the police chief to talk about our concerns. And we had like 20 of our residents show up for that so that they could be heard. We really sincerely wish to appear here tonight. That was held during the daytime. Some of our people were working, so we were hoping some others would be here tonight so that they could hear what was going on and be up to date on it. I am Tony Perry. I'm sorry if I didn't introduce myself. I do live at 1625 Manor, and the address in question is 1230 Windsor. And I guess that our point this evening was mainly according to the information that I sent you. I know it was a lot, but we were trying to be as open with our thought process as that we possibly could. We're clarifying the application of 1778, the municipal code about home occupation, to residential activities that involve ongoing operational service activity. And I think what it is that we have a lot of concerns. And I think there was still, even in the meeting we had on March 3rd, the word was used was interpretation. And I think we're having other interpretations. And I'm not sure this is as cut and dried as it might appear at the surface. We've done, my husband and I have done extensive research, trying to find the wording, what's in the codes, what's in the laws, and trying to apply it to what we do here in Gladstone and trying to make them mesh. And we're finding some areas that could be, for lack of a better word, interpreted as maybe not. So that's what I'm here to discuss tonight. And so I'm seeking clarification with all of you, just to put it out there that there's things that maybe with the best intentions of House Bill 2005 and some of those things weren't really thought about, like logical application to the city of Gladstone and maybe other cities in our state, things people didn't think about when they just dropped that and said, this is what you're going to do. And that there's still a little bit of separation, at least we think so. And that's why we wanted to share what we found with you. So the purpose of our request is that memo we submitted was just to ask whether the city's existing home occupation regulations apply when the residential activities include operational characteristics such as employees and ongoing service operations. Under Oregon law, adult foster homes must be treated as residential uses within residential zones, and we completely agree with that. This is not an objection to adult foster homes, which do provide a really important service to our community. We're not objecting that they're about that part of it. The relevant statutes here are ORS 443.705 to 443.825 and ORS 197.307, which is in those packets if you want, look those up. But these laws ensure that adult foster homes cannot be excluded from residential neighborhoods through zoning restrictions. Exhibit D in your packet of those four that were an addendum to the packet we sent you is titled State versus Local Regulatory Authority. And it does show the context of the ORSs and OARs, which residential uses are regulated by local authority, meaning the city.
Mr. Jacobs, do you have a copy of this as well?
I do.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to make sure.
Thank you. So basically, the state licensing framework works as that the adult foster homes are indeed licensed by the Oregon Department of Human Services. However, the licensing rules themselves, what you ask for if you want to run one of these, do require that applicable local laws and codes, including operational regulations, be adhered to. And this requirement appears in OAR 411-050-0730. Sorry, I'm reading it fast, but it is in your packet. I don't want to tie us up in a bunch of numbers. And the other exhibit that we submitted to you, which in the four that were the addendum, was titled Licensing and Local Compliance Checklist. And that is the procedure of issuance of a state adult licensed foster home to operate, which includes, if you see there, that they must demonstrate local code compliance. It is not disallowed. It must be followed. So the state does not issue an operational license to applicants for adult foster homes with impunity. There is a process. And it's shown in our Exhibit C, all those little lovely tables we sent you to try to make it simpler. It's called Regulatory Timeline for Licensing. And you see that in there. It talks about the local compliances have to be met if you want a state-issued foster care permit. It's part of it. It's not excused in their language. So we believe that the key distinction here is that the zoning classification does determine whether residential use is allowed. We've already cleared that up. But operational regulations which govern activities occurring within residential dwellings is what's kind of going away from the impunity aspect of it here.
Can I interrupt and ask a question?
Of course.
We talked about home occupation permit. We also have local business license. Would a foster care home, adult foster care home in our community have to get a Gladstone business license?
No, it's a state license that they are to obtain.
Okay, so I thought maybe because there's a distinction of those, that would be the local level. So it doesn't even, because it's licensed by an outside agency, as are some other businesses in our community, they don't need a city license.
Yeah, I believe we have an exemption form where we ask them to provide us a copy of it. So we have that information and the police department is aware of it on file, but we do not require them to get a business license.
Okay.
Same with daycare facilities.
Okay, and you mentioned daycare facilities. When we, at the end of 2023, we enacted, or the Planning Commission reviewed the home occupation license rules, brought them forward to the City Council to act on in early 2024. And between the time that the Planning Commission looked at the rules and sent them on to us, there was an additional exemption added to the rules, and that exemption was for home daycare, because that was something missing from our code, a specific exemption. And by adding it there, it took away again some of the confusion, because a daycare facility would have many of the same characteristics. It's operational. It's
It's
making
not
money.
operational 24/7. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's not
I don't
operational.
mean to interrupt, but everything you're asking, I'm actually almost there.
All right. All right.
And I'm not trying to interrupt. I have this whole thing kind of thought out, and it is part of it, actually exactly what you're asking, if I'm maybe permitted to just and then maybe ask a question after I finish this
Sure,
part.
all right, go
I'd
ahead.
really appreciate
Go
it,
ahead.
because I just want to kind of keep the thought process, it's all in line sort of here together. So we were talking about the distinction, and it says that like on Exhibit B in your packet, which shows that state law does indeed govern the first issue of zoning, but that local municipal code does govern the second issue, which is operational regulation. And a city generally cannot regulate whether an adult foster home may exist in that residential zone, but it may regulate how activities within the home operate if the regulations are applied neutrally, is kind of where we're going with this. And here's why. 1778 of the Municipal Code in Gladstone regulates residential income generating activities. We all know that. The ordinance addresses operational characteristics like employees working in the residence, service activity occurring at the home, and traffic and parking impacts. These standards apply broadly to residential activities with those characteristics. Now, as we were just asking, exemptions in the code, 1778 has a very specific list, and adult foster homes, as you just mentioned, are not included in the exemption list for 1778. The code includes family child care homes, such as daycare operations, which do not impact their neighborhoods on a continuous basis. They are not 24/7, 7 days a week. Because the ordinance defines the exemptions, adding a new exemption would normally require a legislative action, of course, by the city council. So that takes us to what, again, you were just asking about. The municipal code does exempt adult foster homes from a business license under Gladstone Municipal Code 5.04.0302B, business license. The business license requirement and the home occupation regulations are separate regulatory systems that include separate fees. I happen to know because I have to pay for both. I have a home occupation permit. A business operating in Gladstone in any zone, residential or otherwise, requires a business license, but income generating operations in residential zones also require a home occupation permit. Now, as they were saying, part of the state issue or part of the state requirement is that the business of a home adult foster care is exempt from the business license requirement. And they don't, and you have an exemption process for that. But it does not necessarily exempt a residential activity as defined in 1778. So we're operating on this equal treatment principle of Oregon law requires an adult foster home to be treated the same as any other residential use. So if an adult foster home is to be treated the same as any other residential home in a residential zone, then local operation regulations apply, and or local permitting should not be applied to anybody else who wants to have a residential home wishing to have income earning activities. I mean, you either are exempt or you're not. You know, if you're in a residential zone, you should be operating the same as everybody else who's there. So equal treatment means they can't be treated more restrictively, absolutely. But it also means they generally should not receive special exemptions not provided to other residential activities. So our request for clarification basically comes down. The Welter Park neighborhood was designed and constructed based on early 1950s needs and uses. At that time, no one could have imagined the need for UPS, FedEx, Amazon deliveries, how Uber and Grubhub were going to work, or that, you know, grocery and medical supplies could be delivered on semi-trucks to homes, not just businesses. So our streets, particularly in this dead end section of the proposed adult foster home, and I don't know if all of you have been out there to look at it. I know the mayor's familiar, he's right around the corner. But the streets are narrow, and because of an issue of access, when even garbage pickups occur, this creates problems on our street. Families, you know, in this neighborhood used to own one car. The breadwinners worked Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. And, you know, small town America like Gladstone, you know, we all rolled up the sidewalks at like 9 o'clock. Businesses only operated out on 99E or on Portland Avenue for the most part. And we recognize these things are changing. But many of our residents, some of whom are sitting behind me now, bought their homes brand new and have never left. Others came here for the good schools, the quiet streets, and that feeling of community. But all of them deserve to enjoy their right to continued livability, which sort of seems the purpose of 1778 in the first place, to keep our neighborhood livable and not be overcome by things that aren't people living their everyday lives. The beauty of the state's ORS about the placement of adult or foster homes is that it does leave discretion to individual cities through local ordinances such as Chapter 1778. Not every city may be able to accommodate these facilities in every neighborhood that exists. Some are clearly better suited than others. And speaking of the other homes in Gladstone, my husband and I drove by every single one of them. None of them represent the case on our street. They all are on big, wide streets, parking on both sides, egress everywhere. They don't present these problems. And if you haven't seen this street, I strongly suggest you look at it so you understand where we're all coming from. And we just believe that the equal application of the ordinance currently in place does not violate HB 2005. As it's non-discriminatory. In other words, everybody has to do it, not just the adult foster home. And it's ministerial in its purpose. It's just by the book. Everybody does the same thing. So the residents here respectfully request clarification whether the Chapter 1778 applies to residential activities that meet that operational criteria of the chapter. Those exhibits that we provided you with the memo summarize relevant state law, licensing rules, and local code provisions to assist you with that. And we really thank you for hearing us, because we think there's something here that may need to be looked at just a little bit harder than just simply the state says so. I'm not really sure that's true. And these people behind me aren't really sure that's true. And we'd be happy to answer anything else you might have.
All right. Any other comments from city councilors? Leaf, you have your light on, or Councilor Farley?
I do. I know I've talked a lot today. This is the most I've ever
All right.
talked. I apologize. I promise I'll be quiet the next
No,
few
no,
meetings.
no. We want to hear from you. You've got time to make up for it. Those of us, the rest of us have been here a little longer.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a few clarifying questions, if I may. I like to try to understand, just like when we were talking with our last speaker, I think maybe a little differently. But you just gave us the reasons why you don't want the facility, and I just want to make sure I understand this. It sounds like parking and quality of life for the neighborhood. Is there a fear? I'm not sure with the parking. Is there a fear they're going to park in people's driveways, or?
Well, no. I don't have the exact measurement in front of me, unfortunately. The street there is extremely narrow and dead end. So if you drive in there, you got to drive back out the same way. You have to somehow turn around and figure it out. If you go down there at any time of the evening or on the weekend when everyone is home, there are cars parked on both sides of that street already, and there's almost no parking available. So with the addition of 4 more bedrooms, bringing it to 9, aside from the residents who may live there taking care of the patients themselves may own cars if they're ambulatory. There will be visitors, there will be deliveries, and these things it's literally they may not use someone's driveway. Would they block someone's driveway? Possibly. We've had people explain that to us, that they've had issues with some of the construction vehicles that they brought down there just working on this property. They drove through people's yards because they couldn't get turned around. Fire trucks respond there. They have to back out. Everything that goes down that street is now stuck. And if there's a lot of call for service, as with you have people who may be medically unstable, and you have ambulances, you have fire trucks, you have first responders, you have medical deliveries. The people who live down there are very concerned that taking up their street, what if they need to leave in an emergency? What if they need to go to work? What if, it's more traffic than that little tiny 3-block dead end space can handle. And so they are concerned about that. They're concerned about their own safety, their ability to get where they need to go, and how having anywhere from 5 to 9 to more cars parked on their street all the time when they come home do they have to park 5, 6, 8 houses down the block because they can't even get down to their own house to park outside? I mean, it is a livability issue, plus the 24/7 operation, people coming, going, deliveries. I mean, we're just a little one way in, one way out cul-de-sac street. We are 61 homes. And I should bring it to your attention that when we were asking people how they felt about this, we're able to make contact with 53 of those homes and obtain signatures that are on those petitions we gave to you of 57 people who are just not knowing what this is going to do to us and are very, very concerned. It's not that it's an adult foster home. It's simply the placement is very concerning and is going to have a huge impact on our street.
Thank you.
Just to add one more thing that my wife didn't bring up, it's kind of a secondary issue, is the intersection. So it makes it looks like a track, like a racetrack. It's big oval shaped. And there is a dead end at the far end. And that's the location we're talking about. But the one of the other problems is exiting or entrancing into that area. You have to come off of Glen Echo. And our street sits about a foot below Glen Echo. It just because of the way there's so much asphalt, but you can't see left. You can't see right. If there's parking on both sides of Glen Echo, which if you take a right, you have to pull into oncoming traffic to get around the parked cars. I mean, it wasn't built for this type of traffic. I think Windsor Drive is 5 feet narrower than the average street in Gladstone. And that was from one of the public works people that told me that. But there's and to add even more congestion, and not to mention probably tractor trailers for deliveries and any number of things for medical supplies and stuff, just adds more and more and more to that. The fact that people can't see getting in or out of that location, the congestion and everything else on top of it, it's totally a livability issue to every single person for just one house. And while we understand there is a need for adult foster care, I get that. If we had 2 ways in and out, we probably wouldn't be having this argument, but we don't. We have this one way and we have to live with this. And I don't think there's any way we can expand this, but there has to be some leeway by the city council to make decisions regarding specific things like this. We just can't take a broad brush stroke and say, well, we're applying that to everything in the city. I don't think that's what the founders that wrote House Bill 2005, I don't think that's what they meant. And that's why they left it open for so much interpretation. And they specifically, in all of their framework and the process to apply for this, they specifically put in a framework where the city can take business laws and home occupation rules and permits and such, and they have the ability to enforce that on a case-by-case basis. And that's all we're asking for. Let's just look at it for what it is and really just kind of do the right thing.
Appreciate that. I had a follow-up. If this was a child foster home, would that change your guys' opinion at all?
I don't know that if it was children living there and being taken care of, the only impact we see was like the children obviously don't drive. But in a child foster home, they typically live with a set of people who are parents, and they raise children in the foster facility, until they go wherever they end up. That's just like people living in a house. It's not under this same 24/7 people coming and going for the purpose of giving care, because the people who live there, they may be visited by visiting nurses, visiting healthcare workers, state inspectors. I mean, the amount of traffic it's drawing far exceeds just a simple couple kids living there while they wait their next home and they're being cared for. Those people don't get, those kinds of parents, foster parents, they don't get semi trucks bringing them medical supplies or a week's worth of groceries or, those kinds of things. And they don't also have, like we said, the not only the people who live there, the foster parents, all those kids aren't driving, all it's just, it wouldn't be the same. It would be I don't even know if it would be call it an impact. And so maybe that's what's really, the fact that the operational activity in this type of facility is driving why we're here and why we're so concerned. It is a lot. It's a lot for us to absorb.
And it's just to add as an example, if like a food delivery or a medical supply vehicle arrived, depending on, what they're delivering, let's say a week's worth of groceries for 9 people living there, theoretically, it would be a tractor trailer, probably a 35-foot trailer with a big, tractor pulling it through those narrow streets with cars parked on both sides. And the vehicle would have to back down that driveway. Every single person in that dead end street would be blocked potentially 20, 30 minutes. So if you have to go to work, and those guys aren't, they're not on a schedule like they're going to be here at 8:15 that you can work around. One day they'll be here at 7, one day they'll be there at 9. And so it's, that's the impact on the community is it doesn't affect us. We live on the far side, but I see the impact it's going to be on my neighbors and how they're going to feel about that. And I don't think any of us would want to be stuck waiting for a vehicle to move for 20, 30 minutes.
Well, that kind of leads me to my final question. If someone's in that late stage of life, do you feel they deserve to pass in a wonderful community like this and get to enjoy the quality that we have in Gladstone, even if it only impairs 20 minutes of your life?
Well, absolutely. And that's not the issue.
There you got it.
Everybody, not every person who occupies these types of homes is in their last stage of life. Some of these people are just transitioning, like what would be a nursing home. There's transitioning from more severe care to less care until they can go somewhere else. Just as an aside, my sister-in-law, my husband's sister, lives in this type of situation in Reno, Nevada. It's an adult foster home. They have 3 residents and they have caregivers who are there 24/7. They do shift change. They are not like living there. And you wouldn't even know they're there. It's this lovely wide street. They have no cars on the street. They have one in the driveway at any given time. They are such a small, it's 3 people, so groceries are not brought by semi. It's not 9 people living there or more. So it's not the one person who may be at end of life, because that's not always the case. And we can't, of course, address every individual situation, but a lot of these residential care facilities, like my husband's sister, she's been living there for years because she's a Down syndrome patient. So it's not that she's dying, she just needs a place to be. And so
well, and that's why I asked, because your key
Yeah.
example sounded like the hindrance of emergency vehicles. So
no, and not the hindrance of them coming, but these people behind me have often expressed, and some of them may wish to say something as well, that, with the frequency that they come, down the street, because there have been other situations where they've had to respond down there, not associated with this particular address, it creates problems for them. And it's not that the person dying is the problem, it's the frequency, it's the types of vehicles, it's the constant coming and going, it's the traffic on both sides that they can't even get to their own homes. So we're not trying to be so specific as to say we're not against adult foster homes. That's not the situation. This is just probably one of the worst addresses in the city of Gladstone where you might want to put this facility.
I'd like to give Councillor Mitchell an opportunity to weigh in.
I'm sorry, this has been in my head for a while now, so it might not come out right anymore. So if you drive down some streets in Portland, some streets in Milwaukee, they have neighborhoods where you park on this side of the street. You don't park on this side of the street. It's because there's not enough room. And that sounds like take the home out, take the 9 extra people living there, or whatever the amount is. It sounds like regardless, this is a street problem for everyone that lives there. And it's been probably a decade since I've driven down that street. So I can't remember obviously a lot of homes in Gladstone don't have enough room in a driveway for 2 cars, but how do those kind of streets, I don't know if this is a Administrator Betts question or a Chad Jacobs question, but how do those kind of streets that have parking on one side, not parking on another come about? How does that come about? And would that be an answer to this issue? Sure, I might answer that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So we have our transportation system plan in the city that dictates how wide streets are for certain uses. So if it's a certain width, it qualifies for parking on one side. If it's a other width, it qualifies for parking on both sides. You know, obviously this is predating our current transportation system plan, so I can't speak to whether it's meeting the current standards for parking on both sides, but if issues did keep arising where things were happening, there is always the option for the city to consider doing parking on one side of a street to keep the traffic flowing better for the area. The other thing to point out is this neighborhood was platted to connect through to Abernethy. There's platted right of way to connect out of the back of the neighborhood. So the plan was that this wouldn't be a dead end. But I don't know what happened, that never got built.
Didn't happen.
So it's still on the books, but the streets were built in a way to accommodate parking on both sides at the time that this was platted. But those things are considered by cities on occasion. Traffic Safety Board would of course get involved, that sort of thing, but does that help?
Councilor Huckabee.
Thank you. So I have unique experience with this. I live on Yale Avenue, which is a cul-de-sac. We have one of these homes in this cul-de-sac, and it is right kitty corner to me. None of the examples of what you are assuming is going to happen in this home happens at my home.
Such as?
The home. There's no semi trucks coming in. There's not even Safeway delivery trucks coming in for that. The ambulance has never been there. And on Yale Avenue in our cul-de-sac, 2 cars cannot pass each other at the same time. We have to make room for the other one to come in or out, right? So I feel like there's a lot of gross assumptions of what's going to go on in this home.
You live on the street that's real steep?
No, I
And-
live on Yale Avenue. It's not steep.
I don't know where that is.
So then you didn't drive by that home.
Well, I'm off the top
Well,
of my
I have to tell you, it's not on the state's list as being one of these. I mean, maybe it's a different coded type of home than the ones that we're talking about, because I have the list here of all the ones that the state lists as being in Gladstone and meeting this type of thing. And so I don't know which type you have.
Well, I know that the state came in because they had to make some adjustments to the home. That was a longtime homeowner, then rented it out and then eventually sold it. And this organization, I don't know the name of it. They have live-in caregivers, and then they also have caregivers that come and go. The residents there are amazing, and they have great relationships with the neighbors around. And we have not experienced one single problem with them.
All right, I think you've made your case. You presented us a lot of written information, which we appreciate. We can refer to and help to understand your position. I referenced earlier that when we updated our home occupancy permit section in the code, we added a paragraph which made it clear that home childcare facilities were exempt. I looked at some home occupancy code language from other cities, and I noticed, for example, the city of Happy Valley has this line in their code. Residential care homes that are protected by the Federal Fair Housing Act and may have characteristics of a home occupation permit are exempt from the home occupation permit process due to state and federal law. It probably would be helpful for us to have an exemption like that in our code. It would have been more clear cut to you that these homes are exempt, but they are exempt because of state and federal law. Federal housing law, which has been in existence for 37 years. And we are not permitted to violate that law as a city. We've taken an oath to defend the Constitution and the laws. And just because a specific exemption or something is not written into our code in a timely manner doesn't mean that we still don't have to follow those rules. And so, Chad, I'd appreciate if you could kind of summarize where we are here and how much leeway we have to change the rules that we're given by the federal government on this matter.
Well, we have zero leeway to change the rules that are set forth by the federal government. And so, that are things that we have to comply with. I think if what you're asking, if I'm understanding correctly, is, could we clarify our local code to make that point explicit in the code? And the answer to that is yes, just like we did with the childcare homes, we could do so with these adult foster care homes and similar types of facilities. Again, I'll stress that I do not believe that the code currently applies to these types of facilities anyways. And so this would just be a clarification of that point. And so if that's something that the council wants us to do, we can go through the legislative amendment process for the zoning code like you did earlier tonight. And Heather and her staff can work on that process to add that clarification.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is speculation. Like, we don't have an actual company that has agreed to buy this for a foster care home use. So it seems to me that what maybe the city can offer you is, again, that ability when or if this gets sold to a foster care, that, we can help the neighborhood negotiate with these people about, parking and, so that your concerns are addressed, because I'm sure they're not going to want to operate in a super hostile environment. They would like their neighbors to be, part of the neighborhood, and, their clients to be part of the neighborhood, and all of those sorts of things. And it seems like we're a little bit putting a cart before the horse. In other words, we don't actually know that this is speculation on the part of a developer.
And Tony made a good point. We don't know if these will be ambulatory people who will even be able to drive their own cars. Homes like this can serve developmentally disabled people who may be up walking in the neighborhood and using the neighborhood for daily walks like many of you do, or they may be people who are bedridden and we will never see them, or somewhere in between. But I think Councilor Blog makes a good point. I think the issue is to try to be good neighbors to, if a facility were to come into the neighborhood, to try to be good neighbors with them and to be sure that they are good neighbors to the residents of the street too, to be aware of where you can turn into a driveway to make a turn, and what time of day deliveries might be difficult for people. I've lived in that neighborhood now for almost 11 years. I see ambulances, I see fire trucks, I see all forms of delivery vehicles. Neighbors, many of them here tonight, have had their roofs replaced. They've had sidewalks and driveways replaced. Those have brought in big construction vehicles. And yeah, it's a little bit inconvenient for a few moments, but it's part of what it is to live in a neighborhood and to share that and to keep up your home as residents of a neighborhood. And so as much as I appreciate, the work and the effort you've taken to bring this to us, I think perhaps by clarifying our code, we can help other neighborhoods understand the exemption that exists on the home occupancy thing. And then we can provide the kind of support that Administrator Betts and our police chief and our planner have said will help for a good transition if and when, and I think you're right, cart before the horse, if and when this becomes a foster home as proposed.
Well, yes, if and when. It is kind of inevitable, or they wouldn't apply to put 9 bedrooms in, because no one usually in our neighborhood has 9 bedrooms in a home. So, and the fact that the application to the county does state for the purpose of an adult foster care home. So the indications are there. Yes, it's being held up right now and there's a lot of other stuff going on, but that is pretty much the intent. How long that'll take, don't know, but it is the intent.
And I will tell you one more thing. I'm not going to advise you to complain about the lack of building permits for some of the work that's already been done, but that is an option you have. And that as much as anything could prevent some of the things you fear from happening.
We've made a few.
The individual who represented this project with city officials was not the nicest person to work with. And I don't like it when city officials are bullied by people who think they can push them around. So if you want to push them around a little, you'd have my blessing. I shouldn't say this publicly, but that's where I am.
Mayor Milch, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Just so I can get some knowledge. You had mentioned the Fair Housing Act and you specifically described some verbiage in there. Do you have the paragraph or what section you were looking at? So I would like to read it.
Yeah, let me see.
Thank you.
See if I have something here. Yeah, the Department of Justice and the Department of Housing and Urban Development have some information on their website, which includes some frequently asked questions about this. I think if you just Google Fair Housing Act, let's see, residential group homes or something like that, it'll probably come up. Okay. But from a publication back in 1999, they even have frequently asked questions. And obviously you do that because they are asked so frequently that this comes up and up. You are not the first people to raise this question.
Yeah, let's hope they've updated it since 1999. But
the question was, but the law still applies. And the question was, can a local government consider the feelings of neighbors in making a decision about granting a permit to a group home to locate in a residential neighborhood? And they go on to answer that as to why we cannot do so. We cannot discriminate in that way. And that is still the law. And that is still out there. It's a law that was enacted 1988 during the Reagan administration and went into effect in 1989 during the beginning of the George W. Bush administration. For someone I know you're concerned about whether it's a partisan thing or not, it isn't. No, it's all right.
Not.
I think we're
Mayor,
done with this item on our agenda. So thank you both for coming.
Mayor, before you move on, can I just say one quick thing? I just want the neighbors to know that staff at our office went through all the materials that they submitted. We took a very close look at this. This is not something that we brushed off, and I just want to make sure that their efforts weren't gone unnoticed. And I just want to clarify one point because I think it got lost through their comments, is that the preemption that we're talking about in state law is not related to all laws, such as like the business license, for example, but it relates to the zoning code. And the home occupation permit process is part of the zoning code process. It's in the zoning code. And that's why that preemption applies to the home occupation permit, where it may not apply to the business license permit. So I just want to make that point clear, because I don't think that was very clear in what I said previously based on their comments. And I just also really wanted to express that, to thank them for their time and effort, and that, it's not something that we just blew off. We took a substantial amount of time looking at all this on behalf of the city. So I just want to make that clear for Jackie and Heather and myself.
Thank you, Chad. I know you represent the city and not the citizens, but it's good that your office can provide that kind of clarity and examine things with that depth in a way that does benefit citizens and the city leaders as well. So thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is appointments to two of our city committees, the Park and Recreation Advisory Board and the Budget Committee. Administrator Betts?
Okay.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. You had one more.
5 minutes.
A 5-minute break. Oh, sure. Let's take a break. Yeah, we've been here for a while. Yeah.
It's the real MVP over there.
Councilor Labonte is not back, but he wasn't here when we started, so I guess we're all here. So
let's do this.
Let's resume. Do you need to push a button to get us going, or are we still?
I just turned you back on.
All right, we are back. Item 12A and 12B. These are appointments to local boards. We've done this before. We have some candidates for an opening. We have a vacant term on the Park and Recreation Board that will expire 12/31/27. So it's a 2-year term. And we have 4 applicants. Kim Baller, Bishop Dixon, Kathleen Hollingsworth, Emily Yarborough. So committee or counselors have the applications in their packet. Are people ready to act on this? Is there any discussion?
Do we just want to go down the line and use last name for our vote?
Yes, vote for one. So Tammy, you can call the roll and enter the votes.
Counselor Huckabee,
I will do Kim Baller.
Counselor Mitchell,
Forgive me if I say this wrong, Yarborough.
Counselor Blau,
Baller,
Counselor Farley,
Baller.
Counselor Garlington,
Hollingsworth,
Mayor Milch.
Kim Ballard. So I believe there are 4 votes for Kim Ballard. So Kim Ballard is appointed to the board. He was a member of our ad hoc tree committee last year and very active and interested in what we're doing. Lives between McLaughlin and the Willamette River, and probably will have some great advocacy for the parks on that side. So I think that's a good choice. Thank you, committee or council. We move to item 12B. And this is for an appointment to the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee will next meet in early 2027. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so this is not somebody who will be active right away. We currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people on the committee, so there's 1 vacant position, and we have 1 applicant, Mr. Bishop Dixon. I believe it's Mr. Do we know?
It's Bishop Dixon.
Okay, Bishop Dixon. Yeah, I'm not gonna speculate on anything else. Bishop has applied for really all vacancies on the committee, has a strong motivation to serve the city. So do I hear a motion to appoint Bishop Dixon to the Budget Committee?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All right, Bishop Dixon has been nominated and seconded. Tammy, would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Garlington,
yes.
Counselor Farley,
Yes.
Counselor Blau,
yes.
Counselor Mitchell,
Yes.
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, Bishop Dixon is appointed to the Budget Committee. Thank you. That's the end of our regular agenda. Do we have any business carried forward?
I have nothing. Thank you.
All right. Did anyone request to do business from the audience tonight?
I've received no requests.
All right. So we're up to business from the council. I will call on people in alphabetical order, starting with the first letter of your first name. So I believe Gabrielle Blau, you will go first.
I'm going to keep it brief. I don't have a whole lot. As far as the Metro Vision Committee, we are beginning our community outreach and rollout, and we'll have a plan at the end of this week.
Thank you. Councillor Leaf Farley.
I've run out of words today, so thank you.
Thank you. We'll get out that much earlier. Councillor Maria Mitchell.
First off, thank you for everyone who applied for committees and boards. Second, so right now, the libraries in Clackamas County, all 13 of them are doing something called Explore the LINCC, which is the county's library trail. So if you go to each library and get lovely stamps, I know you can't see this, but you collect stamps from all the libraries at different colors. You can enter in for fun prizes, plus you get to see all the different libraries, and it's just a fun challenge. And then it goes until March 31st. And then, and also obviously Gladstone and Oak Lodge, so our neighboring libraries are participating amongst others. And then lastly, I hope you've all had a chance to celebrate National Women's History Month. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Mindy Garlington.
So I just want to remind everybody that April 25th is the Arbor Day plant sale at the Nature Park. And of course, everybody in this community and your friends and your family and anyone else you can think of are welcome. We love having the kids running around the park. For anybody that hasn't seen that new secondary trail and all the extra happenings that will be happening in the park, you know, it's be a great time to envision all of those fun things going on. So please make sure you've marked your calendar for that. It is Women's History Month. There's a lot of really good stories online. I've been reading them daily. And I'm just really inspired by the people who have led the way and the people who are currently leading the way. So that's kind of an exciting thing to happen. I'm sure there's a lot of wonderful things going on before we have a next meeting. But and the egg hunt, are we having another meeting before the egg hunt? Just come to the egg hunt, bring the kids. It's 45 seconds of sheer joy. Thanks.
All right, Counselor Vanessa Huckabee.
Thank you. I have a little bit this evening. First, I had the privilege of participating in Everybody Reads Day at John Wetton Elementary. So I got to read to 4th and 5th graders, and the book I chose, which might have been a little remedial for them, but it doesn't matter. I chose Caesar the No Drama Llama, because why not? It was interesting to see how many were familiar with him and have seen him places. So that was fun. Let's see, planning for the 3rd annual Juneteenth celebration has started. And if anybody is interested in helping out with that, please contact me. Our online payment system is back up and running. Yes. So customers needing to pay any fees or registration stuff for the community center can go ahead and do that via electronic payment now. That also includes our utility payments. Our first music on the greens will be on Friday, June 12th at 6 p.m. It's going to be featuring the Beth Willis Band and Smoking John's Barbecue Food Truck. I think that's it. Thank you.
I had a fun week last week. On Tuesday, my family and I attended a ribbon cutting for the Cascade Counseling Center, which is on 82nd Drive, just past the is it a racket club over there? I think it is. I think that's the place. It is a counseling facility that operated under different management in this community a while back and has reopened now, and they offer resources to families. I took my 2 young grandsons, and it was cool that they had kid-friendly areas in the building for children who need counseling because of family or trauma or whatever else. And so it's good to welcome them to our community. We had a field trip of 3rd and 4th graders from the local Adventist elementary school. They were here to tour the city hall and the police station. The police station was far more interesting for them, but they were here purportedly to learn a little bit about government, and police is certainly one big function of our government. So that was fun to do. And I also participated on Everybody Reads Day. I read, what's the name of it? Now I can't remember. Buffalo Fluffalo, yes, by Bess Kalb. I decided to read it because I saw Bess doing testimony before a congressional committee about the importance of not censoring books and being able to, to let children read what they wanted to read. And she gave a shout out to school librarians and public librarians, and I'm glad we have one of those among us here. And so I made that selection and got to read it to 2nd and 3rd and 4th graders at John Wetton. I appreciate that, and whenever I go to John Wetton, I'm always excited that they know I'm the mayor and that they see me later and call me mayor, and that I get to know more and more students who do like the 2 did today, send a letter and say, we think this would be something good for our community. And sometimes they come and visit our meetings in person, and sometimes they, they have other ideas about things. So children are a big part of this community. And I'm glad we find ways to care for them and serve them. And that means, our schools are a very important part of that. So try to come and attend the event on the 18th if you'd like to be a part of the process of making sure that we continue to have a strong school district in this community. I believe that brings us to the end of just about everything on our agenda tonight. We are at about 9:39 PM. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, it's been moved and seconded by Councilors Huckabee and Mitchell respectively. Let's take a vote.
Counselor Huckabee, or
Yes.
yes. Counselor Mitchell,
Yes.
Counselor Blau,
Yes.
Counselor Farley,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, we are adjourned at 9:39 PM.